This is my planet. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 601 Teichu descends to the Eastern Emperor realm. Xiao Siming stared in amazement as Xia Guixuan first escaped into an independent space and time, then took out a Gundam, rode on it and beat him up. Gundam was not to be outdone, and wrestled with Xia Guixuan, and they were evenly matched for a while. Xiao Siming stroked his forehead. You are quite cautious when you are funny? Why are you hitting me? The inner voice of the Gundam sounded. Xia Guixuan said angrily. Gundam was silent for a while, then said, I have indeed seen, Xiao Siming. Xia Guixuan confirmed. Did I wear it? And it was painless. You shrank up when I touched you, Gundam said leisurely. Because of your face, I just want to show my appreciation. Xia Guixuan was stunned, and it took him 3 seconds to react. Fuck, my sister is listening. What nonsense are you talking about? Xiao Siming walked away with his sleeves turned away. You guys continue, I won't listen, okay? Xia Guixuan was furious and stretched out his hand to tear up the cabin of the Gundam. This is fucking that my sister thinks that she ran away because she was ashamed to face me. What direction will the whole plot go? This is intolerable. The Gundam struggled to stop the armor from breaking and said angrily, how is it possible? I can only be almost as good as you when I transform into human form, Xia Guixuan said angrily. People compare with each other, who can compare with the universe? You can transform into the universe, and I can also transform it at my current level. What's the difference? Ahu said, I don't know. I haven't tried it. Do you want to try it now? Xiao Siming poked his head out. There's a war going on in front. What are you doing? If we don't stop them, what if they really try it on the spot? Xia Guixuan's action of tearing up the Gundam with his hands was frozen there. Sister, listen to me, Xiao Siming said leisurely. It doesn't matter whether I listen or not. I don't know if your descendants of gods listen or not. Xia Guixuan grabbed the Gundam. Quick, transform. In front of the army. Ymir and the giants were still laughing wildly. Yin Xiaoru and Xiaoru kept their pretty faces straight and didn't say anything, and the descendants of gods behind them were all silent. How could they argue with others about this matter? Yin Xiaoru and Xiaoru couldn't say that we. Or they could just say, you can kill me but you can't insult my father god, and then rush over to fight desperately. But even if he wins, can the impression of the father god, pervert and his list of titles, be washed away? Unexpectedly, the most vicious one is Ymir with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Should we say that she is worthy of being a life born from venom? At this moment, the void of the universe seemed to twist. People subconsciously turned their heads to look, their eyes widened in surprise. If giants like Gaia or Ymir, when suspended in the universe, have a body similar to that of a small planet, it is already a very shocking visual effect. No wonder they can evolve a world. But a planet is just a planet after all. From the distant perspective of the monks and the universe, it is just a grain of dust. And at this moment, to people's right, all the visible areas of the entire universe have turned into a human face. Blurred at first, it became clearer and clearer, with eyebrows, eyes, nose and mouth soft and playful, lifelike. That is Ahua's face, occupying the visible half of the universe. It was huge and shocking, but it didn't make people feel horrible. Instead, it was beautiful and moving. It was the most original, intimate and beautiful collection in the universe. Almost at the same time, the left half began to change. A handsome man's face occupied the left universe. It was Xia Guixuan. The two faces almost covered the entire visible range. No matter how you looked at it, you felt like dust under the observation of these two gods. The celestial body suspended between the two faces was like the hair on their faces. The two armies facing each other in between, whether giants or descendants of gods, were just microorganisms parasitic on them. The deepest awe and worship of the universe, which touched from the deepest part of the heart, aroused spontaneously. All the descendants of gods bowed to the left, prostrating themselves. Father God, Xiaoru didn't even care that he was a horse at the moment. He knelt on all fours and bowed his head in worship. Father God, Yin Xiaoru, who was sitting on her back, was thrown over unexpectedly. She rolled in the air, her eyes rolling at Xia Guixuan's face, but she didn't bow down. She thought Cindy was really handsome. Correspondingly, the Nordic giants also collectively bowed down, and everyone was bowing to Ahu, the great Jinlunga. Even Emer pursed her lips and said nothing. In fact, Jinlunga is a crack, and Emer was derived from it. If the universe has color, everyone can probably see Ahua's face blushing. What are you shouting? But no matter what you shout, Jinlunga, chaos, that's Ahua. On paper, Ahua is invincible, provided that she doesn't speak. When Ahua silently looks at all living beings, it is truly the gaze of God. The one who spoke was Xia Guixuan. Emer, the sound of the ancient times, like the evening drum and the morning bell, rang in the heart. Emer turned to look at him. The evening drum and the morning bell said, "Look now?" Emer almost stumbled. The giants and descendants of gods who were bowing almost fell to the ground. Xia Guixuan said indifferently, "What is the relationship between chaos and me? Do outsiders need to talk behind my back? You look like a giant, why are you like a woman? Emer, come on, come and label me. You say I'm a pervert, I say you're a woman, isn't it just a quarrel? It's okay that you don't have Xiaoju's long-winded progressive level, but you have been hanging around in the forum for 3 days, aren't you better at quarreling than you? What's more, you are not only an outsider, but also low-level, like a slave discussing the master's family," Xia Guixuan said coldly. "Teichu hasn't seen you, just you. You don't even have the qualifications for me to take action personally, and you dare to gossip?" At the end, his tone became harsh. It was as if the Donghuang bell rang, and a terrifying vibration exploded in the sea of souls. Emer did not expect that this guy would attack again. He was caught off guard and groaned, retreating half a step. In the eyes of others, it was as if the Father God had shouted back the Supreme. Xia Guixuan's real body was not here at all, so how could he really shout back the Supreme? He stopped while he was ahead, and immediately stopped. Zhao Yi, Shang Zhaoi bowed his head. "Here, these shrimp soldiers and crab generals are handed over to you," Shang Zhaoi shouted. "I will definitely wipe out the villains for the Father God." Xia Guixuan's face gradually disappeared, and Ahua left a sigh with an incomprehensible meaning, and gradually disappeared. The morale of the descendants of gods plus 1000. The style is completely crushed. In fact, Ahua wanted to cry when Xia Guixuan grabbed her in the hand. In the eyes of others, isn't it just me who came out to cooperate and say that I am very happy? Xia Guixuan blinked his eyes. It seems so. Ahua lost a lot? Just as he was about to say something, the situation on the battlefield suddenly changed. In the afterglow of Xia Guixuan and Ahua's shadows that had not yet completely dissipated, another hazy shadow appeared superimposed on the two shadows, covering all the areas of Xia Guixuan and Ahua. It looked like Xia Guixuan and Ahua were mixed into a chaos, without Xia Guixuan, and without Ahua. There was only the confusion of the origin, the beginning of the key. Teichu descended. Chapter 602, Kunlun Yuxu is just like Xia Guixuan. What descends at Teichu is not his real body, but also an illusion of Dharma. It looks a bit childish. You are older than Emer, and I am older than you and Ahua. If Xia Guixuan kissing Athena in front of Gaia is not considered as meddling, then this time he brought Ahua out to intimidate Emer, which is really a bit unethical and destroyed the tacit understanding of mutual restraint with Teichu. It can only be said that men can be criticized in any aspect, except that one. Although in fact, Emer facing Shang Zhaoi and Yin Xiaoru was originally a dimensionality reduction attack, this kind of war is not fair. But Teichu will not consider this matter. This is not a ring, this is a war. What they want is that Shang Zhaoi and the others cannot bear it, so as to force Xia Guixuan to take action. When Xia Guixuan and Ahua take action, it can find a loophole to take action against Xia Guixuan and Ahua. Otherwise, Xia Guixuan sits in the three realms, which is a real self-contained universe, and with the help of Ahua, it is difficult to solve. In the end, does Xia Guixuan's action count? It's hard to say, but Teichu obviously can't sit back and watch Xia Guixuan show off his existence in various battlefields. Since you can show off, of course I will show off too, that's called confrontation. It really showed off this time. The atmosphere created by Xia Guixuan and Ahua was achieved by it alone. Its power was even greater than Xia Guixuan's, and its mysterious and vast sense of chaos was even stronger than Ahua's. On the scene, it was almost the same as one person pulling Xia Guixuan and Ahua together. In reality, it was almost the same. Although it was just a Dharma appearance, if the Dharma was compared to the Dharma appearance, it was not an ordinary person who could smash the Dharma of Xia Guixuan and Ahua and knead them into a ball. At least Emer might not be able to do it, otherwise it would have done it long ago. Why is it waiting to be mocked by Xia Guixuan as a toothpick, a woman, and a house slave? Teichu's power is obviously higher than Ymir. There is indeed a gap between the Supreme and the Supreme. If Gaia and Ymir are regarded as the clones of Ahua or Teichu's evolution, it is very likely that they need to be added together to equal one Teichu. Along with its voice, it spread to all directions. The ancient gods are approaching the emerging star field, and the supreme immortals are facing the body of taking. They are shrinking back and retreating, and they are just talking nonsense. They are not as brave as Gongsun Jiayu, a mere mortal. How shameless, they actually came to scold Ymir Gaia. In fact, they also scolded Chiao and others, but at this time Chiao and Xiaoju had already started a war, so it was not shameful anyway. Ymir said, I wanted to insult them. Teichu's voice was neither sad nor happy. Humiliate yourself, Ymir. The Dharma image began to dissipate. Xia Guixuan's opponent is me. Why are you guys worried about each other? I just want to see how you break through the Kanglong star field, not how you fight. The giants bowed down and worshipped. We will tear these humble insects to pieces. I'm waiting. The Dharma image disappeared. Yin Xiaoru quickly rode on Xiaoai, and Shang Xiaoai stood with the spear, staring at the violent giants coming. The spear was suddenly raised high. The great Zhaoshan star array, the immortal formation versus the giant charge. The war was completely started. Gaia also started the war. In the end, it all depends on the fist. If the Athena who destroyed her reputation and subverted her cognition was torn apart, she would not be Athena anymore. Boom, the torrent of war spread across the star field, and almost every inch of it was covered with flames. In terms of strength ratio, the Kanglong star field has a large population and strong military force, but the other side has two supremas, and the cutting-edge power is far superior. Shung Zhao, Yi Yaowu and others can only retreat to the Three Realms array, relying on the power of the formation to bless and defend, otherwise they will be slapped into meat paste by Gaia Ymir in a slap outside the formation. But how long can the formation last? As Gaia Ymir is supreme, they can find a way to break the formation, but what will happen then? But Xia Guixuan, whose Dharma image was crushed by Teichu, was not surprised but happy at this moment. Because he has sensed the location of Teichu's true body. Isn't it for this that he accepted the torture of the Windblade and Frost Sword? When the Dharma image came into contact, he had already caught a trace of the breath of the Teichu original spirit, not far away, at the junction of the East Emperor realm and Kunlun, outside the multiple planes of the Kunlun peak. The sky outside the sky. Kunlun Yuxu. If Teichu can be attacked, will everything be settled? Xia Guixuan did not attack directly from the East Emperor realm. He deliberately left, took a detour, and descended on Kunlun from another direction. Boom, the plane opened up, and the palace was faintly visible in the clouds. A Taoist sat cross-legged in front of the palace and opened his eyes. With the action of opening his eyes, it seemed that the whole Yuxa became bright, the clouds dissipated, and the truth was revealed. The clouds opened and the moon was bright, and the sun and the moon hung in the sky. It was as if opening his eyes was the beginning of the sky. He is Teichu, but he is not, because he is one of the three bodies of Teichu. One breath into three pure. If he had to give him a name, it would be Yuanqi Xianzhen. Xia Guixuan didn't say a word of greeting. As he approached Yuanqi Xianzhen, he already had the sword of Gentei in his hand, and stabbed the sword of Nirvana straight forward. He knew that Teichu might have another incarnation on the front line, but it didn't matter. No matter who it was, if an incarnation was seriously injured, the main body would be seriously damaged. Taking advantage of the incompleteness of Teichu, this surprise attack would be the decisive game. Compared with Xia Guixuan's era, the name of Sanking came later. There was no name of Sanking Xiaoyu in Xia Guixuan's respect list. Not to mention Yuanqi Xianzhen, the villain of the 10,000 years of online literature. Even if Taishang Laojun was here, he would be killed with one sword. The tip of the sword was dark, like a black hole, like nothingness, swallowing and dissipating, and touching it was nirvana. Yuanqi Xianzhen threw out his whisk. The whisk turned into a cloud hanging from the sky, vast and boundless. That ray of nirvana entered it, as if it had entered a world, rushing left and right, destroying most of this world, and finally exhausted and disappeared. It was as if the sword of destruction came and created a world for you to destroy, and after destroying it, it would calm down. Equally matched. The clouds and sky dissipated, revealing the towering Yuxu Palace and Yuanqi in front of the palace. Xia Guixuan stood in front of him with a sword in hand, his expression stern. Ahua came out of his arms and stood beside him in human form. This was the strongest enemy Xia Guixuan had ever encountered in his life. In most of today's literary and artistic works, this person is the top existence, an immortal saint. Being able to be evenly matched is already a source of pride. If Yuanqi and Xia Guixuan are evenly matched, then with Ahua, can this mixed doubles match be won quickly? Turning to look at Ahua, he saw Ahua's expression was cold and resentful, and the murderous aura that soared into the sky filled the clouds, dyeing the fairyland Kunlun with ink. That beautiful face seemed to be a little distorted, becoming ugly, and also stronger. Xia Guixuan dared to guarantee that he had never seen Ahua with such a terrifying aura, as if he could destroy the entire universe. But Yuanqi slowly spoke, Xia Guixuan. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Xia Guixuan narrowed his eyes slightly. When Ahua was so scary that even I was frightened, your first sentence was to find me instead of Ahua. It's too insulting. Chapter 603 Yuanqi Xianmo. Perhaps because of the hatred between the two, nothing he said would be meaningful or edible. Maybe it was because Ahua was basically unable to communicate at this time. That was a hatred that destroyed the body and wandered lonely in the void for billions of years. The 4 words irreconcilable were not enough to describe it. Xia Guixuan didn't even have time to answer Yuanqi's half-sentence. Ahua's murderous intent and hatred had already pressed down like a substance. The entire Kunlun Yuxia seemed to have become an ink painting, twisted, pure black, and stained without any color. It was an explosion of all the negative resentment in the world. If it can be quantified, Ahua's resentful attack can almost generate hundreds of millions of dark demons like Zelter in the past, and it would be no problem to spread throughout the universe. Xia Guixuan admitted that even he had a hard time taking Ahua's move. This was the origin of the move, and there was no need for any magic weapon to bless it. Ahua herself is the Tao, and there is nothing higher than the Tao. This is the boss style that the remnant of the holy demon in the evolution world should have in my mind before I met Ahua. Even the actions and expressions of the ruthless and taciturn person are. If you were so reliable in the previous battle, Gaia Digen would have turned to ashes long ago. A thought flashed through his mind, and the clouds that had just been dispersed by Xia Guixuan gathered again, hanging in the sky, intertwining with Ahua's black energy. Xia Guixuan's heart moved. This majestic energy. The auspicious clouds of the heavens? All evils are shunned, and all things are not touched. Are the legends of later generations really credible? Or is it also caused by people, and the legend came first, and then this energy came? Otherwise, from this scene, Yuanqi is the righteous side, and Ahua is the evil spirit. No matter how you look at it, it seems that his side is the villain. Is there something wrong? A thought flashed through his mind, and Xia Guixuan didn't just stand there and watch. Just as the auspicious clouds of the heavens and the resentful energy were entangled, Xia Guixuan's sword had already flown out again. The sword seemed to disappear, invisible and traceless. It's not because it's fast, but because it's nothing. Everything returns to nothingness, and the sword is also nothingness, and all the tracks it passes through return to nothingness. The sword of nothingness. Swoosh, a wind banner unfolded, and the world seemed to solidify. The sword of return to nothingness appeared, and it turned from nothingness into something. Pangu banner. Boom, the 3 parties fought, and the realm was shaken. Time and space were already cracked. Even Xia Guixuan was a little surprised. His Kanglong star domain had not been in operation for long, and it could block the supreme attack after it was well constructed. But this great heaven outside the sky, the place where Kunlun Yuxia was located, had been in operation for countless billions of years, and it couldn't even withstand the attack of these 3 people. The realm began to collapse. Is it a little unexpected? Yuanqi looked a little serious. It was obvious that dealing with Xia Guixuan and Ahua at the same time was not easy for him. But he still smiled. Because your star domain is small, it needs heavy protection and construction as a whole, but, he waved a whisk again, dispersing Ahua's resentful entanglement, this entire universe, thousands of realms. Are all my observations. The collapse of any realm is just the beginning of the opening of a new realm. The Yuxia land is gone, and it's gone, this pattern. This coldness. You who stick to your own little piece of land, give up the Taishi who has transformed into the infinite universe. Is your supremacy really supreme? Yuanqi smiled slightly, and a jade ruai flew out. Clang, the jade ruai hit the sword of Gente, and each flew back. Kalala, the sky and the earth cracked, the realm collapsed, and it seemed that a piece of the sky was torn apart above Kunlun. All living beings looked up and saw 3 figures in the sky that were like a black hole, like gods and demons. Dayu held a white fox and looked up, frowning and staring. The Donghuang realm collectively raised their heads, and Xiao Siming bit his lower lip. Will this be a decisive battle? Although I have been waiting, I always feel that it comes too soon when it comes suddenly. Yuanqi's voice spread throughout the realms. Do you know why I don't want to communicate with her? Look at her now, is she still Taishi? She is no longer Taishi. When resentment fills her heart, she lets the universe shrink and collapse without caring. She is called Yuanqi Xianmo. Xia Guixuan turned his head to look at Ahua again. Ahua's face was distorted, her eyes were filled with hatred and cruelty, even her long hair had turned into a black flame, her delicate hands were black, she was indeed like a demon. It was true that she was a demon, the Yuanqi demon. Ahua was a bad person to begin with, it was hard to reason with her, she just acted on her own will. At this moment if you told her to be calm and ethereal, that would be like talking to a cow. When she saw Yuanqi, the hatred that had been suppressed for billions of years filled her heart. It was really useless for anyone to talk to her, she was a demon. From the cause and effect of her resurrection and the decline of the universe, she was also a demon. The reason why Taichu could make the entire Yanhuang lineage remain neutral despite Xia Guixuan, the reason why the New Heaven Court was silent, the reason why the Donghuang realm believed that the expedition to the Kanglong Star region was justified and everyone else was an ally, was because everyone believed that Ahua was a demon, and Yuanqi was the side of justice. Indeed, Xia Guixuan, who personally facilitated Ahua's resurrection, and Si Taikang, the unjust and incompetent emperor, were the bosses who had to be defeated. It's funny to say that after all this, others were the saviors, and she was the evil dragon that destroyed the world. In fact, Ahua also understood Yuanqi's meaning. She felt dissatisfied and unhappy. These were not right. It was not like this. The universe was evolved by her, and she didn't want to. I want to be resurrected. Why am I a demon? Why should I die? Why me? But she was full of hatred and couldn't make any logical arguments. Only the most primitive venting and violence remained, and she became more and more possessed by the devil. I'm not. Go to hell, Ahua roared to the sky, and the wind and clouds changed wildly. The outer world of the sky that cracked the sky was completely shattered by this long roar. The dimension shattered like a mirror, and pieces scattered in the void. Kunlun Yuxu disappeared, and the devilish energy rushed to the sky, sweeping across the universe, and the earth was in turmoil. The power of a roar was so great. The evil will of all living beings was aroused, and countless cultivators held their heads and wailed. Even the peaceful and tranquil Kunlun began to wither. Fairies had wrinkles, fairy flowers and grass were withering, and the spring water of the fairy family was all polluted. Pangu banner waved, and the soft breeze blew away the evil will and protected the universe. Yuanqi's voice spread to the world again. Xia Guixuan, Kunlun Yanhuang guaranteed you, so you can be free until now. If you still insist on being wrong, you will be the enemy of all living beings. Don't turn back, don't turn back. Don't turn back. Thunder roared into his head, the evil will was still around him. Xia Guixuan turned his head and looked at Ahua, and Ahua was also looking at him. In addition to the evil will and hatred in his eyes, there was a bit of complexity. Ahua also knew that it was wrong for her to do this. Xia Guixuan was not a reckless person. If she really continued to be so evil, Xia Guixuan might really stop her. But she couldn't help it. She also didn't want Xia Guixuan to see her ugly appearance now. Chaos not only gathers beauty, but also ugliness. However, what she showed to Xia Guixuan was only the beautiful side. Even her foolishness was cute. He was just an old pervert. If she was pretty, he might help her. If she was ugly, he might kill demons. Ahua was smart. But at this moment, she couldn't hold back at all. Finally, he let him see her ugliness. What would he do? Ahua was not confident. If even Xia Guixuan betrayed her, then Ahua would die, even her heart would die. Xia Guixuan's eyes finally moved. He looked at the Donghuang realm below, the suspended Kunlun Su, the distant sky and clouds, and the shadowy heavenly generals and soldiers. As he looked, he suddenly laughed. Ha, ha 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 ha. He laughed louder and louder, and finally laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha. The three realms were stunned. Yuanqi also frowned. Xia Guixuan held his stomach and laughed so hard that he gasped. Ahua. Ahua subconsciously said I don't know why. How can you become so wild and cute even when you are ugly, like a little wild cat? Am I too prejudiced? Ahua, Yuanqi, the three realms were all stunned. Xia Guixuan, what are you talking about, Xia Guixuan? Is there something wrong with your XP system, or are you blinded by greed? This is really a world-destroying demon. Chapter 604, Deserted by Everyone? The scene was very strange for a while. Originally, it seemed that Ahua was going crazy, but of course others didn't know that she was going crazy, and they thought that this was how demons were. Now it seems that the crazy person is Xia Guixuan. What are you doing? You call a supreme demon, the original demon, who is capable of destroying the entire universe, a cute wild cat? Do you want to hold it and pet it? No matter what words you use to call it, even if you don't call it the original demon, just calling it chaos. Chaos is the proof of the demon god and the symbol of chaos. Do you think that changing Ahua's cute name can change the essence? Just grab anyone and ask, does anyone think the demon god is cute? If Teoti stood in front of you, would you treat it as a dog? That's a fool. I really can't connect that funny Ahua with any evil. In fact, not only that, I can't connect her with any lofty things. What is the innate 5 elements, the beginning of the formless? What the hell? That's the stinky Gundam that will fight with me, a fool who has never killed a bug since I met her, and who can only make trouble except for being impressive on paper. When Xia Guixuan said her, he was actually talking to Ahua. His eyes were not serious or gentle, but full of smiles. Ahua's evil intentions were a little erratic, and her resentful eyes looked at a loss. It sounded like she was being insulted, but why was she warm? Yuan Shi was also laughing. Is this chaos you are talking about? Yes, it is chaos. Xia Guixuan didn't even look at him, but looked at Ahua. Everyone says that this is a demon who will destroy the world. It seems that everyone is very familiar with her. Is she as familiar as me who holds her in my arms day by day? Countless people complained in their hearts, no matter whether you are familiar with her or not, she really wants to destroy the world. Take the violence just now for example. If Yuan Shi Xianzhen hadn't blocked it, I'm afraid that the 33 days of Kunlun would have collapsed. Do you all think that my Ahua wants to destroy the world? It sounds like it's right. Xia Guixuan suddenly reached out and gently stroked Ahua's face. Regardless of how hideous her face was at the moment, I was thinking, someone killed a person and made a blanket with a human skin to keep warm. Later, the person wanted to be resurrected and wanted to take back his skin, but the murderer said that this was to make me unable to keep warm. What a devil who harms people. I say, does this murderer still have any shame? As Xia Guixuan spoke, he suddenly turned his head and pointed at Yuan Shi hanging in the air in the distance. If we talk about demonic intentions, who is more like a demon? The so-called Yuan Shi heavenly demon. I don't think Ahua is. You are. Ahua's expression slowly calmed down, the fierceness in her eyes became less and less, and she regained her spirituality. She is stupid and can't argue, but Xia Guixuan, the foreign god of war, can. I am just a little Gundam following in his arms. With him, I don't have to think about anything. It has always been like this. You really think I have no brains? I'm just spoiled by him and I'm too lazy to think. However, Yuan Shi Xianzhen responded calmly, what you said is based on the fact that the other party is a human being, but it is not. Xia Guixuan raised his sword-like eyebrows, and Ahua's eyes were angry again. Yuan Shi said calmly, if you must make an analogy, you should compare it to splitting trees to build a house, and the house is now to be gathered into a tree, and the people sleeping inside must all be squeezed into pus and turned into food for the tree. Xia Guixuan suddenly remembered Ahua's roar, but I am a human being. In theory, she was indeed a tree first, and then became a human being after being split. This muddled account cannot be argued without personal experience. When and why she became a human being were also questions that confused Xia Guixuan, but that was not important. Because Ahua is a human being now. A living person who can act cute, make trouble, get angry, complain, and tremble when encountering a playboy. Ahua is a human, Xia Guixuan said coldly. If the house is built with human bones, then the house should be vacated. If the creatures are sucking her flesh and blood, they should stop immediately. If anyone says that she should do this, then please ask the person who said this to take her place. Swoosh, the sword of Gente turned into dazzling light and rushed straight to Yuan Shi Xianzhen's face. Across the past and present, looking up and down, Xia Guixuan's hundreds of thousands of years of pursuit, the integration of the 3,000 great ways, the essence of the origin of the world. The evolution of Taiyi Divine Sword, the Yuan Shi Sword. This is also Taichu. Taichu versus Taichu. Boom, Pangu banner blocked the sun and covered the sky, the birth and death of the two universes collided, and thousands of meteors scattered, like the scene of the destruction of the world, like the beginning of creation. That was the collapse of the 3,000 great ways, unable to withstand the drive of the two supremas, scattered universes. Countless people were moved and excited. This Xia Guixuan has actually reached such a state. Like Ahua. He doesn't need all kinds of fancy treasures. A single sword is the greatest treasure in the world. Treasures are made by people. The ordinary sword that was used to find minerals in Zelter has become a supreme weapon that can compete with Pangu Banner. Just like him, he can already be on par with Yuanqi Xianzhen, whether in verbal debate or fists. And the most surprising thing about this attack is not on the confrontation between Xia Guixuan and Yuanqi Xianzhen. It is beside Xia Guixuan. The ugly and devilish chaos beside him did not go to beat Yuanqi as everyone imagined, but stood quietly beside him and watched Xia Guixuan's agile posture. The long hair that was like black flames rushing into the sky began to soften and droop like a waterfall, dark and soft, as if the night turned into satin and drooped for 9 days. The ferocious face also softened, the corners of his mouth slightly tilted, his lips were red and his teeth were white, and he smiled. The resentful eyes were rolling, and the autumn water in them was shining. The scissor pupils reflected the dazzling light of the sword. There was no devilishness, but some of the ethereal and majestic nine heavens mysterious lady. Xia Guixuan was scolding, "What are you daydreaming about? I can only be reliable for 3 seconds, everyone." Ahua smiled and said, "Do you want me to be beautiful or reliable?" Xia Guixuan thought for a while, "Then I still want to be beautiful. Anyway, I'm used to being unreliable, everyone." I don't remember educating my family like this. Did you teach them? The white fox in his arms, is it bad? Why do I think he is very cute now? Wait a minute, when did you do family education? Have you said 3 sentences in total? When the white fox started fighting. Bang! The collision between Xia Guixuan and Yuanqi Xianzhen still had no result, and both sides retreated 3,000 miles. Ahua, who was known for being beautiful but not reliable, suddenly appeared on the retreating route of Yuanqi Xianzhen and slapped his back with her jade hand. The beautiful Ahua can also be reliable. As if Xia Guixuan had made an appointment, the Donghong bell suddenly rang while he was retreating, aiming to restrain Yuanqi Xianzhen for a moment. But almost at the same time, a strange change occurred in the Donghong realm below. The Tai platform, where the strings of the zither were forged and Xia Guixuan was almost tortured to death, suddenly rolled up a violent power, and spirals of wind, fire, lightning and thunder rolled wildly, rushing straight towards Xia Guixuan. The power was stronger and more concentrated than when he was in it at that time, as if a dead object had spirituality. That was because a group of cultivators from the Donghong realm, led by Xiao Siming, formed a formation in the middle of the platform and drove the attack. I said it before, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Yuanqi Xianzhen Ruai stood in front of Ahua and said to Xia Guixuan lightly, "The reason why I let Xian Wei Tian break is to let you face the formation of the Donghong realm. The subordinates you once trusted and the sister you once loved want to kill you. How do you feel?" Chapter 605, Ahua enters the play. Before Xia Guixuan could answer him, he immediately turned around and stretched out his hand, slapping the killing array that was rushing down from below. With a pull from his palm, the power slid sideways and soared into the sky, brushing past. But he also stumbled a little. After all, he was attacked while retreating from the confrontation with Yuanqi, and he was still driving the Donghong bell. This juncture would be an opportunity to hurt anyone. Xiao Siming grasped it very accurately. The coldness on his face and the hatred in his eyes were even more real. Actually, I'm really a little angry to say. In front of everyone, flirting and affectionate with Ahua, I didn't have such an opportunity, and I guess I will never have such an opportunity. I'll beat you to death. Of course, only the brother and sister knew that they couldn't be killed. Xia Guixuan had already gone deep into the Tai platform and understood the composition of every inch of the attack clearly. Even if the attack driven by this formation was 1,000 times stronger and 1,000 times more spiritual, it would be meaningless. His stagger was fake. The look of disbelief and sadness when he looked at Xiao Siming and the subordinates of the Eastern Emperor realm was also fake, and it was very lifelike. A pair of siblings whose acting skills were as bad as scum in front of each other were acting in front of thousands of people. So far, it seems that their acting is okay. The shock and sadness in Xia Guixuan's eyes, silently looking at Xiao Siming's expression, were just like an actor. He didn't even care what the result of Ahua's sneak attack on Yuanqi would be, and asked Xiao Siming with some difficulty, "You still hate me so much?" Back then, Xiao Siming had a blank expression. Back then, the grudges were settled, and now you are a criminal. Don't confuse them, criminal. Haha, ha ha ha. Xia Guixuan laughed up to the sky, and asked Yun's Hongjin Da Siming and others around Xiao Siming, what about you? Do you think so too? Everyone bowed. Your Majesty. We still want to call you Your Majesty, but Your Majesty has betrayed the world before and has led the devil later. I hope you will return to the right path after straying. There is nothing better than this. Xia Guixuan smiled. What if I think I am right? Everyone shook their heads, stood in formation, and answered with practical actions. Xia Guixuan's eyes were full of sadness, and even his momentum was weakened by several points. Even you, to be honest, if you don't know the situation in advance, and suddenly encounter such a betrayal, the psychological blow to people is really indescribable. But I knew in advance that this was just a stage for acting. From the scene, it became Ahua versus Yuan Shi, and Xia Guixuan was betrayed by his former subordinates and surrounded, so that he lost his momentum and fell into sadness and self-doubt. Yuan Shi repelled Ahua and laughed. This is the truth, that those who are righteous will have many supporters, while those who are unrighteous will have few supporters. Looking back on the past, you were betrayed and exiled, and it seemed that few people stood on your side. History is still repeating itself, and you are still the unrighteous and incompetent emperor. Xiao Siming saved you that time, but this time even Xiao Siming abandoned you. You deserve it. Xia Guixuan looked at Xiao Siming silently. And Xiao Siming looked at him coldly, as if sparks were crackling between the two. The brother and sister, who were once inseparable, eventually turned against each other in front of thousands of people. This psychological blow alone is not something that ordinary people can withstand. It looked like Xia Guixuan couldn't stand it either, and his face became much grayer. Ahua didn't fight Yuan Shi anymore, and returned to Xia Guixuan's side and looked at him strangely. She knew the inside story and found the play very funny, but she didn't dare to say much, fearing that her acting skills would be exposed once she spoke. She wanted to express her comfort to Xia Guixuan, thought about it, and reached out to hold Xia Guixuan's hand. Xia Guixuan felt the soft little hand he held, and was slightly startled. He turned his head and saw Ahua looking at him with sparkling eyes, as if saying, "You still have me." Xia Guixuan blinked. Well, on the surface, it was just like a decent young man who made the world his enemy for the sake of a demon witch, and was deserted by everyone. It's getting more and more like that, isn't it? It's just that this witch is not coquettish enough. Just holding hands makes her look like a pure little white flower, which is a little less interesting. Xia Guixuan, Yuan Shi Xianzhen said with a smile, in the current situation, are you still obsessed? If you can turn back, we will not kill you. You can live in Kunlun for a long time to accompany your ancestors and enjoy family life. Isn't it good? Your Kanglong Star region can also be preserved, and no one will be angry with them. Why should you be betrayed by your friends and relatives for a demon that destroys the world? When your soul is sealed, your body will turn into ashes, and your reputation will be lost here. The Kanglong Star region will be a river of blood. Why? Even though she knew that Xia Guixuan was acting, and that there were other reasons for Xia Guixuan to rebel against Teichu, Ahua still had a feeling in a trance when listening to Yuan Shi's words. He really faced the whole world for me. At this moment, Xia Guixuan looked really lonely. The worst thing was that he didn't get this demon girl at all. She suddenly hugged Xia Guixuan's neck and kissed him hard. Xia Guixuan, no, I'm acting. What are you moved by? It's hard to say whether others were deceived or not, but Ahua was deceived into the play first. Ahua really was into the play. Whether it was a play or not, the essence was not wrong. Xia Guixuan's rebellion against Teichu was one thing, and whether it was because of her was another. Xia Guixuan really took a lot of pressure that he shouldn't have for her. If it weren't for her, at least he wouldn't have no one to support him, and even his grandfather would hide in Kunlun and not speak. Everyone didn't deal with Xia Guixuan personally, which was already a great favor. It wouldn't have come to this, it was all because of her, Ahua. And your sister opposed you for this. It's okay, you have me. I'm very beautiful now, more beautiful than your sister. Ahua kissed harder and harder, awkwardly and clumsily. She didn't care what others thought of her at all. She was chaos, the devil, Tai Shi, and a troublemaker who did whatever she wanted, but she was not a beautiful girl. Xia Guixuan gave up the world, so I'll give him the whole universe. No matter what Ahua thought, Xia Guixuan would not be polite. To be honest, he really coveted Ahua. When Ahua just transformed into human form, he was still fascinated by her. However, at that time, he thought it was immoral to seduce a mentally retarded person, which was not good. And later he found out that she had not yet pretended to be cool, so he had no idea. But now she took the initiative. So why bother? Wouldn't it be stupid not to take advantage of this opportunity? Xia Guixuan was furious. The two of them embraced in the void. The East Emperor realm, Kunlun, and heaven, countless immortals and gods in the world watched the two kissing, stunned. Is this really the beginning of fucking the universe? Even Yuanqi was stunned. How could he have thought that every word he said was weakening Xia Guixuan's will? Not only did it have no effect, but every word pierced Ahua's heart, acting as a wingman. He actually understood Ahua better than Xia Guixuan. If Ahua was done to him, then Taichu, then himself. Is Xia Guixuan going to be the father god of the entire universe, including himself? This is too crazy. What kind of chaos will it cause? No one can deduce. Yuanqi's calm and smiling face disappeared, and he began to get a little angry. Xia Guixuan, are you really stubborn? He took the initiative to attack for the first time. The three treasures Jade Ruai turned into a stream of light and hit the back of Ahua's head. At the same time, Xiao Siming was furious on the Tai platform. Beat them, beat this couple to death. At this moment, Xiao Siming didn't need to act. Chapter 606, The Awakened Tyrant. Ahua turned around quickly, waved her slender hand, and with an earth-shattering explosion, Yuanqi Xianzhen's famous three treasures Jade Ruai flew back. Looking at the appearance, the treasure light was much dim. I wonder if it has cracked. Yuanqi Xianzhen was shocked. Ahua's power seemed to be stronger than he knew. Little did he know how much force Ahua used in this seemingly casual wave. It's so irritating. I didn't expect that kissing Xia Guixuan would be so comfortable, and I could still feel suffocated and dizzy, like being high. Before I could experience it more, someone attacked. Beat your sister. I want to kiss a man. I'm so annoyed. Ahua kissed Xia Guixuan again, turned around and jumped, clasped her hands and hit Yuanqi's head viciously. Going berserk again. Yuanqi fought and retreated silently. He knew that the runaway Ahua would be invincible for a while, so he had to avoid her and slowly look for opportunities. Then again, where did this anger come from? It was no worse than the anger he had when he saw his great enemy before. Fortunately, Xia Guixuan was also entangled at this time and could not attack him from both sides. Seeing Xiao Siming, who was leading the crowd to kill him, Xia Guixuan's first reaction was almost to hold his head and squat to defend, but then he realized that he couldn't hold his head. He had to fight. And he had to fight for real. Because there were still many things that were not clear, and it was not the time to reveal the truth. For example, only one of the three pure ones appeared. Where were the other two? In the Kanglong Star region, or did they not actually exist? Was Yuanqi just an illusion of Taichu, not a clone or the original body? Now Yuanqi looked like he was trying to persuade him to surrender, and there were still many ideas that he had not revealed, and he could continue to dig deeper. For example, the war in the Kanglong Star region was still going on, and there would be changes at any time. What if the other three pure ones came? What would happen then? The play has been played so realistically, shouldn't good steel be used on the blade? With a clang, Xia Guixuan blocked Xiao Siming's sword with his sword, and subconsciously kicked out with a kick. Xiao Siming stared. Xia Guixuan's leg suddenly turned, and kicked Da Siming who was attacking from the side. Da Siming, he stretched out his hand with all his strength to block it, and was kicked thousands of miles away without stopping. Behind Xia Guixuan, Yun's Hongjin's cloud belt had already wrapped around him. Xia Guixuan pulled back and grabbed the cloud belt. Dongjin was operating the formation below, and Wuxiang was unable to participate in the attack. So Xia Guixuan confronted Xiao Siming with a sword in his right hand, and grabbed the cloud belt with his left hand, and there was a stalemate for a while. Xia Guixuan was a little bit hesitant. They were based on the Tai formation, and everyone had received a powerful blessing. They could feel it quickly with a sword, a kick, and a tug. The combined power was not much different from the Supreme. There was a kind of power that was transmitted and echoed with each other, and everyone felt that they had upgraded. In theory, this formation was not very scientific. Oh, not very immortal. For example, the Three Realms formation on whose Kanglong Star was actually a defensive formation. If it had the effect of strengthening Yao Wu and the others, it was actually the formation that gathered the will of all living beings, not the power of the formation itself. And this kind of enhancement could not make Yao Wu and the others reach the supreme ability. How much it was strengthened depended on the individual. The formation provided that when Gaia and Ymir attacked, they could defend from any angle. Yao Wu and the others were just attacking and not defending, which was an advantage. Even so, he was worried that the formation would be cracked. At that time, Yao Wu and the others would fight with the Supreme with their heads? That's why he had to split his soul to show his existence, which was both suppression and deterrence, and also meant to interfere with Gaia and the others breaking the formation. But at the moment, the Tai formation has been strengthened to the point where people can directly fight against the Supreme. Da Siming took a kick from him, but only flew back thousands of miles, and was not injured. The original crushing situation of the Supreme overtaking was offset. The most important gap between the Supreme and taking is still the level of cognition of the origin of the universe. If you can't recognize it and understand the Tao, then you can't achieve it. It can't be achieved by simply accumulating power. If the power of the Supreme is so easy to obtain, why did everyone hesitate for hundreds of thousands of years? Not to mention the conservation of energy. The energy of the Tai Terrace itself is only half a step to the Supreme. How can it allow so many people to achieve the supreme power? It's neither scientific nor immortal. What's the problem here? The thought flashed through his mind, and the Da Siming had already turned back. Xiao Siming gritted his teeth and used all his strength. He wanted to chop him, but he couldn't break the defense of his Junte sword. Yun's Hongjin behind him was also tug of war, competing with him for the ownership of the cloud belt. Cough, Xia Guixuan coughed dryly and pulled with his left hand. Yun's Hongjin cried "Ai" and fell into Xia Guixuan's arms involuntarily. Xia Guixuan took her waist and turned around gently. Xiao Siming almost chopped Yun's Hongjin's back with his sword and hurriedly put away the sword. A kick came from the side and gently kicked her pink buttocks. Xiao Siming fell to the cloud with a bang. Xia Guixuan was still hugging Yun's Hongjin over there. Kunlun spectators, Tui. Scumbag. Tu scumbag. White Fox was saying to Dayu, I want to beat him up. Dayu touched his beard, but I think, White Fox and Dayu started fighting. Yun's Hongjin was ashamed and angry, and slapped Xia Guixuan's chest with all his strength. Your Majesty, please respect yourself. Xia Guixuan put away the sword with his right hand, quickly grasped her wrist, and smiled slightly. In the past, we were kings and subjects, and I respected you and showed you more respect. Today, we are enemies. Isn't it normal? It seems to be true. But aren't you too frivolous? There is a king like you, and there is a supreme being like you? Yun's Hongjin was so angry that his face turned red. Is your status another matter? Has your majesty changed? Xia Guixuan said lightly. It seems that you have changed. Speaking of which, now that you see me as a lustful and tyrant king who wants to overthrow the world for a woman, then let me be a tyrant. It looked like you wanted to go up and take a sip. It seemed that his XP of teasing women in front of the battle was completely awakened by Athena and Ahua. The fire on Xiao Siming's head over there was about to burn through the 9 layers of heaven. Xia Guixuan. Accept your death. A sword flashed coldly, and rushed straight to his side. A smile flashed in Xia Guixuan's eyes, and he suddenly let go of Yun's Hongjin. The two separated in an instant, and Xiao Siming passed through them with a sword. Xia Guixuan stretched out his hand and grabbed Xiao Siming's belt, then twisted it and held Xiao Siming in his arms. Xiao Siming, Xia Guixuan smiled wildly like a boss. Since His Majesty Xiao Siming can't stand his subordinates being humiliated, then you should do it yourself. In full view of everyone, Xia Guixuan really lowered his head and kissed him. Xiao Siming's eyes widened and she struggled hard, but how could she break free in a short time? In the distance, the sword light of Da Siming arrived, and Yun's Hongjin, who was extremely ashamed and angry, raised his cloud belt again, and the spiral chaos of Tai platform below roared into the sky. Xia Guixuan held Xiao Siming in his arms, stepped lightly, dodged left and right, and kissed her lips accurately amid the attacks from all over the sky and Xiao Siming struggled to avoid. Time seemed to stand still. Everyone was stunned. No, what are you doing, Si Taikang? I know you will be jealous of being intimate with Ahua in public, you will feel that you don't have such an opportunity, and you will be very angry. Then I will find an opportunity. This is it. He flirted with Yun's Hongjin in public, not because of this hobby awakening, but just to find a prelude to this scene. That was my debauchery, and it had nothing to do with her. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 607, The shocking effect of Tathagata's debauchery was indeed quite great. Kissing Ahua, the Taishi, Yuan Shi Tianmo, and Mother of the Universe in public is already challenging people's psychological endurance. Because this concept is too big and too abstract, people can still treat her as a female demon and tell themselves to accept it. Demons and demons are both shameless, just define them according to this. What about Xiao Siming? The whole world knows that these two are siblings. It has been thousands of years and deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even if the two have turned against each other, in the hearts of most people, they are still siblings first. You kiss your sister in public like this? And it was forced. She struggled desperately and twisted her face and was forced. Under the attacks from all over the sky, in the situation of life and death, you don't care about your life, just to hug and force a bite of your sister? That's really awesome. What's more subtle is that for the Eastern Emperor realm, this kind of thing is originally an insult. But when the other party is Xia Guixuan, this insult is reduced to the lightest. Because so far, the greatest king of the Eastern Emperor realm is Xia Guixuan himself. So much so that Da Siming Yun's Hongjin and others looked at this scene and didn't even know how to get angry. There was even a vague thought, if it had been like this back then, it would have been fine. In a very distant world, someone was holding a ghost ball and muttering to himself. I have to say, the scene was outdone by him. Someone was shaking a folding fan, and the fanning action was frozen in his hand. Looking at the person in front of him who was once called his sister, he muttered for a long time, will you be one more in the future? The two were beaten by the ghost ball and the sister. Too late. Woo woo woo. Too romantic. This scene will surely be spread through the ages, whether as a positive or as a background wall to prove the rampant villain. Even if Xiao Siming was forced in the scene, that is also a kind of romance that belongs only to the brother's counterattack against the sister, isn't it? It's not in vain that we helped him contain some things. Bang! The romantic scene did not last too long. After all, under various supreme attacks, it was very difficult to dodge. Xia Guixuan was finally hit on the side by the Taiyai formation. He had no choice but to reach out to push away the attack and could only let go of Xiao Siming. Xiao Siming's hair was a little messy, and he and Da Siming Yun's Hongjin separated into 3 triangles, panting and pointing swords at him. His eyes seemed to be filled with hatred, anger, shame and resentment, and it was impossible to tell clearly. He seemed to be so angry that he couldn't speak, but just panting. In fact, Yun's Hongjin also had a little messy hair, and his eyes were about to overflow with shame and anger. Although the man was handsome and the woman was pretty, but in the past, the monarch and his subjects got along well and respected each other. They were serious gods in charge of their duties, and the relationship between superiors and subordinates, who would have thought about men and women? What happened today completely destroyed the good atmosphere between everyone, and it quickly turned into such a mess. Da Siming was silent. Xia Guixuan stood with his hands behind his back, calm and composed. No one spoke for a long time. From the scene, it was simply Xia Guixuan's reign, and the East Emperor reappeared. Compared to the flirting battle here, the battle between Ahua and Yuan Shi over there was much more intense. The rumbling thunder resounded continuously, and the avenue was fading again and again, providing the best background sound for the calmness of this place. Boom! Ahua and Yuan Shi exchanged blows again, and each retreated, breathing a little. It can be seen that it was not easy for Yuan Shi to deal with Ahua alone. The violent Ahua was not made of clay. Xia Guixuan was also curious in his heart. Yuan Shi was alone, and with the so-called ambush of the Eastern Emperor realm, it was clear that he could not beat the combination of himself and Ahua. Why was he still alone? What about the others? It was obvious that there was more than one sinking. Just as he was thinking about this, his heart suddenly moved. The news of the change in the Kanglong Star region came from the place where the soul was divided. Originally, Xiao Jiu and Qiyu, Yuwu and Gaia, Yin Xiaoru and Emer, were fighting in the 3 battlefields. In terms of cutting-edge combat power, everyone relied on formation defense. In the battle between the armies, it was almost the overwhelming advantage of the Kanglong Star region. The advantages and disadvantages were countered, and it could be considered a temporary stalemate, evenly matched. In a star war with such a large number of participants, it is not possible to determine the winner in one battle. It will most likely take a long time, and it is normal to change various tactics to test. Including the previous offensive plan, it is itself a part of the tactical test. At the most stalemate, The 9 netherworlds suddenly shook, and the closed plane seemed to be knocking on the gate. It would be destroyed in an instant. The huge 9-headed snake spread across the sky and earth, using its body as a guide, tightly entangled with the plane, preventing it from collapsing. 9 pairs of green snake eyes were extremely ferocious in the darkness. I knew that someone would sneak attack the underground. Don't go back if you come. The 30 didn't come out, and the snake eyes suddenly kept. It saw countless bald heads, shining in the darkness, as if to illuminate the darkness of the 9 netherworld. It can indeed illuminate, because many bald heads have dazzling halos behind them, like stars, illuminating the netherworld and dispelling the darkness. Budherland. The undead army hidden behind Hunun collectively roared in pain, as if they were severely restrained by the brilliant Buddha light, including Hunun himself, who was also restrained and could hardly mobilize his demonic nature. To put it bluntly, in addition to the attribute restrained, Xia Guixuan's underworld system itself refers to Buddhism, which has the meaning of the genuine version coming to fight the fake. There is a huge Buddha's Dharma image, opening its eyes in the void. The dazzling light enveloped the 9-headed snake. Hunun twitched. You can see Tathagata even if you are squatting at home. This is really called seeing Tathagata immediately. Xia Guixuan frowned slightly. Yuanqi chuckled. If we talk about deducing various battle situations, what we hope most is that you come here, so that we can't reach you and can no longer support the Kanglong Star region. It doesn't matter whether I can stop you two alone, no wonder he's so calm. The entire Buddhist kingdom. I don't know how many taking are hidden. How many supremas? There must be at least 1 or 2, right? With this kind of strength, I'm afraid they can fight the Kanglong Star region alone, not to mention that they are just a surprise force, coming from hell? Everyone knows that the war is divided into 2 parts. As long as the Kanglong Star region is destroyed, Xia Guixuan will be a rootless duckweed, and he may even fall back on the path of supremeness and no longer be afraid. If he wants to come here, then come here. Yuanqi will only be happier. With Xia Guixuan in charge of the Kanglong Star region, the Buddhist kingdom may be afraid, and Xia Guixuan is definitely not here, so what can the Kanglong Star region do to stop it? Xia Guixuan suddenly smiled. I said that the battle situation over there, I haven't arranged it yet. I don't know if you believe it. Yuanqi was stunned. Xia Guixuan said leisurely, neither you nor I are omnipotent. What we call chess is actually not very similar to war. Professional matters should be left to professionals. I have arms, not alone. As the voice sounded, the soft moonlight superimposed in the depths of the dead world of the Kanglong Star domain, covering the vast darkness of the 9 netherworld. Suddenly, the gloomy underworld turned into a quiet night. The superposition of the lunar plane turned hell into a moonlit night. It was still dark, but no longer afraid of the Buddha's light. The woman came on the moon. Even a group of monks had to admit that she was really beautiful. The beauty of change could completely break the perception of gender beauty in practice, and even Buddha had the idea of breaking the precepts. Countless real dragons followed behind, the strongest recruiting force in the Kanglong Star domain, and the entire Dragon Domain Legion had been waiting here for a long time, just for this moment, to welcome an extremely powerful practice system to come out in full force. There are also dragons in the Buddha kingdom. The 8 kinds of Shinto beings are called 8 tribes, among which the heavenly beings and the dragon beings are at the top, so it is called the 8 tribes of the heavenly dragons. The little white dragon transformed by Xia Guixuan wandered in the void, and suddenly raised its head and roared. The dragons roared in unison, and the dragons of the Buddha kingdom roared in response. The whole plain was filled with dragon roars, as if blood was being torn apart. 2 dragons with different consciousnesses were fighting. Yuanqi frowned slightly. Of course he knew that the dragon bloodline and the logic of the built-in chip had been modified. But he never thought that when did this little dragon king's realm reach this level, and he could use a long roar to draw blood and directly launch a battle of souls. Xia Guixuan said lightly, the Western gods are all here, how can we ignore the greatness of Buddhism? But Xia has something to say first. It has nothing to do with them. They can do whatever they want in their own small piece of land in the Buddha kingdom. If they retreat, they can live in peace. Tathagata, then don't leave. Chapter 608, Destiny from the Blue Dragon. It comes from nowhere and goes nowhere, so it is called Tathagata. If it is as an idea, what Xia Guixuan said seems to have a double meaning. Yuanqi also thinks that Xia Guixuan is indeed interesting, and it is not a fluke that he can get to where he is today. But he still thinks that Xia Guixuan's words are a bit exaggerated. Do you really think that with the details of your Kanglong star domain that can be seen at a glance, you can stop Tathagata from leaving? Xia Guixuan laughed dumbly. It's too early to find out my trump card. Just looking at the current situation, at least Tathagata can't break through my netherworld. The rest, let's talk about it later, not to mention that there is a military commander like Xia Guixuan to coordinate the war, even if someone else is in charge, knowing that the three pure ones have not all been deployed, of course, they will never use all their trump cards. If you use a big move on a soldier, it will be useless at the critical moment. Yuan Shi was very curious. Everyone thought that they had already seen through Xia Guixuan's power. In the Battle of Kingling Fantasy Realm, Xia Guixuan had used up all his strength. After all, he had only developed in the Kanglong Star region for more than 30 years, not 3,000 years. I thought that with the emergence of the Buddha Kingdom, all his trump cards should be forced out. What other trump cards could he hide? He did not say this, but just said lightly, let's not talk about what trump cards you have for now. Just talking about Tathagata's inability to break through your netherworld? Are you too confident? Xia Guixuan laughed. Others will be scared by this Tathagata, but my family won't. As the two of them had a simple conversation, Tathagata on the other side also slowly said, the sea of suffering is boundless. Turn back now. The huge Buddha's hand covered the world and grabbed the little white dragon who was howling in front of him. The world in the palm, the endless world, the palm that even monkeys can't escape. The little white dragon looked back, and there seemed to be irony in his dragon eyes. A wonderful thing happened. No matter how big the hand becomes in people's eyes, it is still the size difference between an ordinary hand and a dragon on the little white dragon, not much bigger than the scales on its body. The dragon seems to grow with a hand, and it becomes as big as the hand. But strangely, no one occupies the size of the netherworld, as if they are just catching the dragon in the same place, and the size of both parties relative to the netherworld does not seem to change at all. This visual effect is extremely weird, including the Buddhas in the Buddhist kingdom. Many people feel a strong sense of chest tightness, oppression and distortion after seeing it. But we have to admit that Tathagata can't catch this little dragon at all. What is the biggest thing in the world? It's not the palm, not the spell, not the magical power. Xia Guixuan was saying to Yuan Shi, the body is limited, but the mind is infinite. When you soon raised the will of the dragon clan to a certain level, how could it be bound by a palm? Who knows whether your palm imprisoned the monkey or the monkey in the heart, a monkey somewhere. As the voice sounded, the little white dragon spoke in human language. Mine is very big, you have to bear it. Boom. The white dragon's body swelled and broke through the sky. The huge Buddha's palm turned into golden dots and scattered without a trace. Tathagata frowned slightly. His magical power was really completely broken by such a little white dragon that even taking might not have, and he couldn't do even a little damage. The dragons of the Buddha kingdom, who were responding to the group of dragons before, suddenly became turbulent. The voice of little white dragon spread in the sea of consciousness of every dragon. Dragon means life, the wish of all living beings, and the shape of the sky. We should travel through the heavens to correct our origins. How can we be human beings and bow down to ourselves? Today, Dapan eats one bite, tomorrow, Peacock swallows one bite, and the day after tomorrow, Arhat rides on us and beats us. Are you also dragons? Roar! A green dragon rolled violently, knocking the Arhat on its back to the ground, and was the first to rush out of the Buddhist formation, turning against the front and joining the dragon clan. All the dragons were rolling, their eyes were red, and they were crazy. A group of Buddhas couldn't even stop. This was not the result of little white dragon's words. It was the result of the conflict between the programs of both sides, and the confrontation between antivirus software and viruses. In the eyes of others, almost all dragons are traitors, rebelling here today and there tomorrow. Whoever has a dragon clan under his command will be unlucky. No, there is a common point, they all rebelled from others to Xia Guixuan's command. Because he is the real dragon. There are no dragons in the world, they are man-made. Star dragons are in sympathy, heaven and man are in harmony. The will of heaven, the heart of the emperor, is the dragon. Above the Kanglong star field, the huge Kanglong Dharma image covers the three realms. The dragons are boiling, and they all respect the emperor. This is the result that was destined from the first day when the Kanglong star was named. The madness and turmoil of the dragons completely messed up the confrontation. The Buddhas who were used to pulling a few words before the scene were all confused. The overwhelming dragons and starfield undeads over there have already rushed into the battle under the leadership of Hunan and the new and old dragon gods. The war broke out in an instant, and the eloquent words were no longer useful. Xia Guixuan looked at the chaos in the netherworld and said lightly, "What do you think?" Yuanqi was silent. Judging from this chaotic scene, it seems that the Buddha kingdom, which has high hopes, may not be able to defeat the netherworld. In fact, among Xia Guixuan's subordinates at this time, the strongest one is not Long Gaiao Zhao Yao Hunan, but the new and old dragon gods. Both theories are at the pinnacle of taking, although they may need to be discounted. Can the ability that is given by people and can be controlled really be considered the pinnacle of taking? But the dragon god may be given by people. Xia Guixuan looked at Xiao Siming, then looked at Da Siming and Yun Zongjin on his left and right, and sighed, "But how many are not?" Xiao Siming was silent. She was still sulking. "You humiliated me in front of so many people." Well, I don't know if she was sulking or secretly happy. Her heart was pounding. She seemed to be staring at Xia Guixuan with hatred, but in fact her mind was empty and she had no idea at all. Da Siming and Yun Zongjin were thoughtful. And I don't know how much they understood, but in fact, the object Xia Guixuan was referring to was the Buddha kingdom. No matter how many times in history Buddha has surpassed Taoism, no matter how many people judge that the two saints in the West are equal to the three pure ones. In the worldview where the innate five Tai evolutions have become a reality, the Buddha kingdom must be a latecomer. After all, Ahua didn't know them. The later ones also mean becoming gods because of people. If it is not derived later, it is the creation of the beginning. There can be no real creation level supreme. At most, it is great to create a plane of paradise in the West. It is good enough that he did not reincarnate as a Saint Sia of Athena. There is no origin, and there is no destination, so it is called Tathagata. Judging from this name, it is more likely to be artificial. The so-called Buddha of the first three generations, the Buddha of the last three generations. The eternal PPT exists in the virtual world, which is similar to the new and old dragon gods. It is almost a prearranged setting, and Xia Guixuan is very sure of this. Dragon domain versus Buddha kingdom, just right. It can be defended. So now, Xia Guixuan looked at Yuanqi. "We have just finished warming up. Is it our turn now? What other cards do you have? Show me." Swoosh, Ahua returned to Xia Guixuan and habitually reached out to hold his hand. The two stood quietly in the encirclement, the wind whistled, and the sleeves of their clothes fluttered. People watching from afar always had a very strange feeling. They were too good looking. It was hard to tell who is the protagonist of justice and who is the boss. Because of this, no one acted rashly. In many cases, who is justice is just to see who has the bigger fist. Words and debates are meaningless in the end. The winner is justice. P.S. I was delayed today, and there is only one update. I will try to make up for it tomorrow. Chapter 609, Collision of Universes. The war started again. Naturally, it was still Yuanqi versus Ahua, with Xia Guixuan and Donghuang's old friend entangled. Xia Guixuan was a little puzzled by this. Logically, when the Donghuang realm's ambush array formation to surprise Xia Guixuan was easily cracked, Yuanqi should have known that it was meaningless to distribute a battle like this. Since the attack of Tai platform was ineffective, even if the people of Donghuang realm were blessed by the array formation to become pseudo-superiors, they could not beat Xia Guixuan at all, and would only be used as objects of teasing by him to tell romantic stories. But until now, Yuanqi has not used other trump cards. Just as Yuanqi has always been curious about what cards Xia Guixuan is holding, Xia Guixuan is also confused why the other two kings have never appeared. This doesn't seem right. Once the people of Donghuang realm are defeated by Xia Guixuan and Ahua beat Yuanqi, Yuanqi will definitely not be able to withstand it, no doubt. Ahua is not made of clay, and Xia Guixuan is not either. 1/3 of Taichu can hardly fight one of them alone, and it is impossible for them to be the enemy of the two of them. Is he looking for death? Xia Guixuan dare not think that they are being restrained by some other forces. Not to mention whether this is true or not, even if it is possible, others will not work hard for you. Isn't it easy for Wushan to break away from the restrained and turn around to give you a knife? If he is restricted by some agreement, it is a matter of life and death. What's the use of the agreement? You still have to be prepared to fight the three pure ones alone, or be prepared for the other party to merge the three pure ones into Taichu at any time. Speaking of which, assuming that the other party is restricted by someone, then now the other party is pretending to be sincere? persuading surrender, exposing Ahua's demonic nature in front of everyone to influence others' inclinations, hoping to use the rebellion of the people in the East Emperor realm to strike at Xia Guixuan's will, and hoping to use the Buddha kingdom to raid the Kangong Star region to shake Xia Guixuan's fighting spirit. Does all this mean that Yuanxi has been bluffing? It is very likely that from just now until this moment, the other party actually does not have the three pure ones and does not have the power of Taichu at all. It just wants to win other battles through other means, such as persuading surrender or stealing the home. If so, Moji's conventional idea of waiting for the other party to show his trump card was wrong. A quick battle, a quick decision, to defeat Yuanxi with the fastest means. With this in mind, Xia Guixuan interacted with his body to avoid a sort of dociming, and at the same time, his soul had descended on Yuanxi. Their battle, this kind of close-range swordplay, hugging and kissing, was originally a kind of semi-tacit understanding. Even if the people in the Eastern Emperor realm had their minds modified, they did not have the intention to kill Xia Guixuan wholeheartedly, and Xia Guixuan would not get serious with him. The original intention of both parties was just to entangle. When it comes to being serious, the battle mode will not be this template at all. It is the entanglement of divine thoughts, the collision of laws, and the struggle and mobilization of the power of the universe. This is the first time that Xia Guixuan has officially tested the power of Yuanxi's laws. The divine consciousness invaded, and Xia Guixuan's own soul sea also exploded. A very strange feeling. Because the image he saw on Yuanxi's side was also the chaos of the universe, almost exactly the same as Ahua. It was a vast and boundless place, with a most mysterious and vast power. When people entered it, they could feel their own insignificance, which was the powerlessness in the face of the entire universe. If the universe sneezed, you would turn into ash. The difference was that Ahua had not had such a terrifying and powerless image for a long time. That only existed in the brain flower period when they first met. Now Ahua, well, especially the image of the road that had been entered a few days ago, could only make people feel the touch of the origin of life, the feeling of wanting to kneel down and kiss the yellow earth. But on the Yuanxi side, there was no such touch, only a sense of oppression, and the coldness of the eternal vacancy. It seemed that the birth and death of all things were just a small process of natural evolution. In the eyes of the eternal universe, the destruction of a star-field civilization was no different from the destruction of an ant nest. Xia Guixuan suddenly had a strange idea. I had been confused before. The innate five Tai were originally the five processes of the evolution of a life, and should not be divided into five people. At that time, I thought that since Taichu, Ahua, and Gaia were separated, they could only be regarded as five kinds of life. But now it seems that this conclusion still needs to be questioned. I always feel that these five kinds of life should still have a strong connection. They are essentially one life. Is it possible that under certain special circumstances, they can still be united? Taichu is Taishi, and Yuanxi is Ahua? The image perception is only a moment, and Yuanxi will not give Xia Guixuan time to think slowly. Just when Xia Guixuan had some ideas, the entire universe collapsed, and terrifying pressure from all directions pressed down on his soul. If he was a little weaker, he would inevitably be crushed by the terrifying pressure and his soul would be annihilated, and not even a residual soul would be left. The so-called supreme immortality seems to be questionable. Of course, such soul-crushing could not crush Xia Guixuan. In Yuanxi's perception, it was originally just an ant in the universe, a microorganism smaller than the star bugs who were addicted to taking secret photos, but no matter how it squeezed, the microorganism did not move at all, just like using the palm of your hand to grab a microorganism in the air. No matter how much strength you use, you can't catch anything. Then the microorganism began to expand and grow rapidly. From a mayfly to a giant dragon. The giant dragon soars in the universe, devours the stars, absorbs the nebula, opens its eyes to become the sun and the moon, opens its mouth to spit out wind and clouds, and each scale evolves the heavens and turns into thousands of realms. In just a blink of an eye, it is also the universe. If Yuanxi exploded the heavens with chaos, Xia Guixuan evolved multiple dimensions with a meaning of infinity. The two universes absorbed and collided with each other, gradually forming the shape of an extremely huge black hole, intertwined. And the power began to overflow and spread to the reality outside the sea of consciousness. Xiao Siming and others retreated thousands of miles, looking at the void between Xia Guixuan and Yuanxi with some fear. It seemed like a whirlpool there, absorbing and expanding, as if it would burst at any time, and it could recreate the earth, water, Fire and wind. It's a real supreme war, Dayu whispered. Their war is actually not something we can intervene in. Our position is just to add pressure on his mind so that he doesn't have to worry, White Fox said. Who said that one generation is worse than the next? Dayu smiled slightly. Of course, it's better to be better than the master. Not only you and me, but also Teichu. Don't you think that it's boring and frustrating to have an unchanging heaven standing on top forever? Will Taikang not? No. He is more interested in playing with foxes than this interest, just like me. White Fox and Dayu started fighting again. No matter how much these two love to fight, many people watching have similar ideas. Teichu has many strange practices. On the surface, it seems to be pretty good, and Dayu said he doesn't object, but when you think about it carefully, you always feel that something is wrong, and the more you think about it, the more wrong it is. Let alone other things, just to make a backup of the Qianling fantasy world, what do you want to do? No one else could challenge it before, and the conflict was not intensified to the point where it had to be challenged, but now there is. A man who dares to fuck the universe, of course he dares to challenge the universe. Whoever you are. The Yuanqi universe and Xia Guixuan's dragon-shaped universe collided with each other, and in the midst of the tearing confrontation, Arhua moved. The third universe invaded the stalemate point, as if another world was stuffed into the black hole. Boom, a silent explosion, a loud sound, a huge image without a visible form. No one could see what happened, and no one could hear what happened. The whole scene was in a state of confusion. At this moment, a slender jade hand pressed on Xia Guixuan's back. It's still too late. There's still one more chapter before 12 o'clock. I'll make up for it tomorrow. Chapter 610, Betrayal Again. This was a strange incident that caught the onlookers off guard. The one who attacked Xia Guixuan was actually Arhua, the demon Xia Guixuan defended against the world and would rather turn himself into a demon boss than fight against the world. Arhua even held hands with her to show their affection when they were fighting against the enemy. What was even more strange was that her spirit was helping Xia Guixuan. The two of them played a doubles match against Yuanqi. Yuanqi's spirit was overwhelmed and the universe was cracked and collapsed. It was already unable to hold on. But at this moment, Arhua's body attacked Xia Guixuan's body. The face that had been demonized and turned back to beautiful by Xia Guixuan's words became distorted and hideous again. But there was disbelief in her eyes. She didn't want to hit Xia Guixuan. How could this happen? The spirit was clearly helping Xia Guixuan to hit others, but why did the body involuntarily hit Xia Guixuan? Schizophrenia? No, this is a split between body and soul? Or is this chaos, always doing things you can't even imagine? No, I don't want to. This isn't chaos, I just want to be reliable for once. Arhua was almost going crazy, her soul attacking Yuanqi started to get confused. I don't want this. Yuanqi smiled. No wonder he was not at all weak when he could not win against two people alone. It turned out that he was not pretending, but was hiding his hand. Bang! Arhua's hand slapped Xia Guixuan's back firmly, but it made a sound like hitting steel. The shadow of a small tripod emerged, and then it turned into 9, surrounding him. Xia Guixuan was actually prepared and had been preparing for this moment. Arhua was stunned for a moment, and then she didn't care about Xia Guixuan's defense against her. She said in ecstasy, "You are so smart," but although she looked happy, her hands were playing another trick, attacking Xia Guixuan from top to bottom, and she was extremely cruel. The onlookers all felt chilled. This scene was too weird. But it was a little subtle that most of the onlookers thought Arhua was a demon. But this time, everyone felt a little sympathetic, because this really didn't seem like her demon nature. Her anxious, panicked and almost collapsed tone was really not fake. The one who looked more like a demon was Yuanqi with a smile on his face, because Arhua was obviously being attacked by him, which led to this strange and chilling phenomenon. As Xia Guixuan said before, who is the demon? At least at this moment, there was a sign of reversal. For me, this is enough. Xia Guixuan threw out this sentence without a beginning or an end, and whispered, "Let everyone see that my Arhua is not a bad person." As he spoke, the 9 cauldrons separated from the upper and lower parts, blocking Arhua's attack again. And he reached out and tightly grasped Arhua's hand that wanted to attack his back, trying to calm Arhua's emotions. But at the same time, he also groaned softly, distracted by dealing with Arhua, and finally suffered a great loss in the battle of the soul and universe. The soul shrank back urgently, and his face was slightly pale. Ahua was deeply moved. It was more touching than kissing her in front of everyone before. She thought she would never have such emotions, the emotions of wanting to cling to him and hug him, wanting to get entangled with him, and being allowed to enter his way freely. Even if she had experienced it before, she thought she was just playing around. But this time, she deeply felt what kind of emotion it was. Is this human love? I wish I could die in his arms, and I would have no regrets. If we all go back alive, I will definitely install that thing and let you play with it, and you can play with it however you want. No matter how weird the idea flashed through Ahua's mind, the situation did not allow them to be moved. As Xia Guixuan retreated with a muffled sound, Yuanqi followed him like a shadow, and the Pangu banner rolled up, about to suppress Xia Guixuan and the 9 cauldrons in it. You think I have no trump card and attack me with all your strength, just for this moment? End it. At this moment, Yun's Hongjin Da Siming and Xiao Siming attacked at the same time, and Dongjin below drove Tai platform to launch another supreme attack. In front, Yuanqi held the Pangu banner, covering the sky and the sun. Behind Ahua held her hand and could not move. This time, Xia Guixuan was truly facing the whole world alone. Dayu held the white fox in his arms without saying a word, with clear worry in his eyes. Even in the depths of Kunlun, countless silent eyes seemed to be stirring at this moment. Yan Huang was shocked and wanted to help him. But Xia Guixuan's eyes flashed fiercely, and he almost did not dodge the attack from the Eastern Emperor realm, allowing the 9 cauldrons to block it. His left hand was still trying his best to smooth out Ahua's chaos, and his right hand, the Junte, had already turned into fierce light and rushed towards the Pangu banner. The sword of Yuanqi fights the banner of Yanqi again. Boom! Countless attacks descended on him. While taking so many attacks at the same time, could he still resist Yuanqi? Facts proved. He could still resist. He was just a little behind, and his face became paler. But the Pangu banner could not break the sword light, and could only barely form an encirclement, encircling him and the 9 cauldrons. A ray of sword light was rushing out alone and firmly, unwilling and stubborn. Yuanqi Xianzhen's eyes also began to turn fierce. If they just put in a little more effort, would they be able to completely subdue Xia Guixuan? Just as both sides were exerting their strongest strength, another change occurred. A longsword also emerged from behind Yuanqi, and stabbed Yuanqi's back as well. The onlookers, Yun's Hongjin Da Siming almost fell from the air. Your Majesty, it turned out that the sword was drawn by Xiao Siming. This wave of changes made people dizzy. What happened? Ahua, who loved Xia Guixuan so much that Xia Guixuan almost betrayed the whole world for her, turned against him and beat Xia Guixuan. Xiao Siming, who was forced by Xia Guixuan to eat in public and was so angry that he wanted to chop Xia Guixuan into meat sauce. Oh, in fact, it had already been implemented. They had been enemies for many years. Xiao Siming, who had almost killed Xia Guixuan, was the real enemy. To this day, he still tells his subordinates how to kill Xia Guixuan every day, and no one is allowed to persuade him. Such a Xiao Siming actually turned against Yuanqi at a great opportunity. This is a good opportunity to kill Xia Guixuan, but isn't it also an opportunity for Yuanqi to think that he has a sure win, and to use all his mind to defeat Xia Guixuan with one blow, and not to be on guard against other changes? Xiao Siming has been waiting for this moment for a long time. Isn't it for this opportunity that he has been acting until now? The sword that destroys the stars pierced into Yuanqi's back unscrupulously. This is a sword that has been blessed by the formation and has pseudo-supreme power. What will be the result? With a puff sound, Xiao Siming's eyes flashed with astonishment, but he saw an apricot yellow flag on Yuanqi's back. The magic sword pierced the flag, but it was blocked after all. It only penetrated the flesh slightly by half an inch, and then it could no longer continue. The sword energy that attacked Yuanqi's body was forced out in an instant, and a drop of blood fell to the ground along the sword body, instantly turning into a sea of blood, flooding the East Emperor realm. A jade ruai flew out and went straight to Xiao Siming's face, accompanied by Yuanqi's light cough and laughter. Xia Guixuan will guard behind him. Do you really think that I am a complete fool? You siblings, Xiao Siming's face was as gloomy as water. If it was exposed, it was exposed. As long as the other party really didn't have the other 2 kings to intervene, then this battle could be fought. She split the jade ruai with a sword, flew up and stabbed again. Her eyes were sharp and unmatched, and the gentle and artistic elegance of playing the piano at this moment turned into a fierce and stern look. The contrast made everyone feel like they were in a dream. Xia Guixuan seemed to be completely in the same mind with her, and there was no need for even an eye contact. The 9 cauldrons counterattacked, the Pangu banner rolled back, and the Junte sword pierced the wind banner and went straight to Yuanqi's forehead. Ahua's uncontrolled attack was shadowing behind him, but Xia Guixuan didn't care, as if he was willing to fight to the death with Yuanqi first, even if he was seriously injured by Ahua. The brother and sister coordinated their swords in perfect harmony, each moving forward with equal determination. The sky, the ground, time, space, and multiple dimensions were all blocked by the brother and sister in perfect harmony. The scene was frozen. The smile that Yuanqi had always worn also disappeared. Could he escape this disaster? Chapter 611, the so-called beginning. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Yuanqi's body began to fade away. The swords of the brother and sister crossed over his body, but only pierced the phantom. Various strange changes made many spectators who were not well trained almost stunned. Is that Guixu? Or is it that Yuanqi, who had been fighting here just now, was actually a phantom that did not exist at all? Even Xiao Siming showed a look of surprise, and urgently turned in the air and slashed another sword in the direction where the phantom disappeared. This kind of sword of law does not have to attack the entity. As long as the opponent exists, even if it is just an illusory Dharma image, it can have a certain attack effect. But this sword was still like slashing the air, nothing happened. Xia Guixuan, on the other hand, looked calm, as if he had expected this result. He did not use the extra strength on Yuanqi, but turned back to block Ahua's attack again. "Sign, I remember how many times you hit me, I will slowly pay you back later." Ahua was about to cry. "You are still in the mood to joke, why not?" Xia Guixuan looked up at the sky, his eyes shining. "I have basically figured out its routine." In the void, there was a strange echo, like thunder coming from nowhere. "Is that so?" People with low cultivation have no idea where the sound came from, but Xia Guixuan can see it. His eyes saw the air that ordinary people cannot see. All the air in the universe, omnipresent, is Teichu. He suddenly laughed. "My hunch is right. Yuanqi really doesn't exist. Not to mention he's an old Taoist priest, he may not even have a gender. It's just part of the key, condensed into an image. No matter how you split it, scattered and returned to the universe, it is still Teichu." There seemed to be laughter all around, responding. "Why do you think so?" Xia Guixuan seemed to be answering a question that was not asked, and seemed to be organizing his thoughts. "So why was it a black fog that caused trouble in the Taiyan plane?" "Because it was formed by the evil spirits in the bodies of all creatures in the Taiyan plane, and it is also a part of Teichu, limited by the structure of the Taiyan plane. It can only be a taking level." Teichu did not deny it again, but laughed. It is said that Xia Guixuan is very thoughtful and can often see the big from the small, and it is true. Xia Guixuan's thinking became smoother and smoother. Why is one key transformed into 3 pure, not 2 pure or 4 pure? Because 3 gives birth to all things. It originally represents countless. Theoretically, everyone lives in Qi, that is, everyone lives in Teichu, and everyone breathes Teichu. Of course, it is not actually calculated this way. The Qi here refers specifically to the Qi of cultivation, not air. But this also means that in fact, every practitioner, especially those who practice with Teichu as the way of heaven, is under the influence of Teichu. Maybe it can't control you, but it is completely possible to make your attack completely ineffective against it. Your attack is nothing but confluence into the sea. Just like Xiao Siming at this moment, no matter how she fights, the energy of her attack will only merge with Teichu, and there is no possibility of harm. I was confused before, why the formation constructed by Taiyi platform can make everyone in the East Emperor realm get the supreme level upgrade? It stands to reason that a formation cannot play such a role. Otherwise wouldn't the supreme be worthless? The answer is here, Xia Guixuan said lightly. It's not the effect of the formation at all, but Teichu resonates to enhance the key in each of them, and everyone is just borrowing the power of Teichu. Yun's Hongjian Da Siming and others were shocked. If it is true, there is something else in these words, and it is terrifying to think about it carefully. I have been borrowing the power of others, but I don't feel anything at all. I am ignorant. This. Xia Guixuan simply pointed it out inside in a low voice, as the primordial creation, they are the best carriers, creation. Yun's Hongjian and others suddenly turned their heads to look at Xiao Siming, who had a blank expression on his face. We are not stupid people. When everything is revealed, how can we not figure out some confusions that have existed for a long time? Why is there no trace of myself from childhood to adulthood? Why does it seem that I was born to practice like this? This is fine. It can be explained as a natural God, the essence of heaven and earth gathered together, and the style is quite high. But why can't I make progress no matter how I practice? Because it's just a set program. So isn't it natural for Xiao Siming to rebel against the primordial? Everything suddenly became clear. Xia Guixuan held Ahua's hand and whispered, as for Ahua, she is actually two sides of Taichu, the humanity part that was stripped off, so after it exploded, it turned into human form, and because of this, Ahua always believed in her bones, I am a human. Ahua also understood that some fragments that were unclear in the chaos were completely connected together. She was originally Taichu. Stripped off and turned into the world, it is called Taishi. The 5 and 8 Tai are basically one person. Even Gaia and the others are actually derived from me turning into the real world. In theory, it is also possible to say that they are my clones. Did the 5 elements and 4 gods miss a sentence? In a sense, she, Ahua, is how-to. Ahua who turned into the real world is how-to. Or, all the how-to added together is Ahua. For them, whoever has a stronger soul can control the body, because this is essentially the body of Taichu. So Gaia was able to control Ahua's plane of heaven and earth, which made Ahua very embarrassed. And the humanity of chaos and funny is obviously not as good as the extreme cold Xiangxan at present. Ahua's strength has never reached the level expected by everyone. How can she control this body better than Taichu? So Ahua had a kind of consciousness a long time ago, and told Xia Guixuan, it's okay for her to gather her own body or even Kindling Fantasy World to gather her body, and it won't provoke Taichu to stop. Because isn't the body she gathers for Taichu to use? But with Xia Guixuan's cooperation, it won't work, because Taichu can't control the changes at that time. So it has developed to this day, it's just that simple. Taichu was laughing, wonderful, wonderful, you can think of so many things just by looking at my gaseous form. I heard that you have a woman who writes novels, Xia Guixuan said lightly, it's not just a gaseous form, but you are so strong at this moment that it exceeds my endurance. If I don't finish what I want to say, I'm afraid I won't have the chance to finish it. Taichu smiled and said, not to the extent. You keep talking. I also want to see how many stories you have strung together. Xia Guixuan smiled slightly. In the atmosphere where you can almost influence everything in the universe, there is only a small group of people who are a little different, that is the Yanhuang lineage. Because they are native planes, they have their own way of cultivation. Taichu suddenly stopped talking. Xia Guixuan's words suddenly hit the key point, which was unexpected by Taichu. It suddenly didn't want Xia Guixuan to continue talking, but at this moment it was obviously out of its control. Dayu told Xia Guixuan that Fuxi performed the 8 diagrams and Huangdi performed the Nijing, and they had developed their own origins. Including Dayu's Star Dragon Way, which was also created by himself. The root of the system lies in the origin of Xia, which means the correspondence between the human emperor and the blue dragon star map. Note, chapter 217. This is the ancient Chinese civilization outside the Taichu system. China's own original heaven and man way is at most a combination of some Taichu laws. Therefore, Xiao Siming and others cannot hurt Taichu, while most people in the Yanhuang lineage may be able to do so, but their practice may not be enough. Among them, Xia Guixuan, who uses the Star Dragon Way as the fundamental law and whose realm at this time has reached the origin of nothingness and is on par with Taichu, can definitely hurt Taichu. Xia Guixuan is very glad that his sister did not teach him the fundamental law, but asked him to find his grandfather. Otherwise, he would be controlled by others today. Xia Guixuan said lightly, I can almost be sure that you have no good intentions towards the Yanhuang lineage. I can analyze your series of actions. Do you still want to listen to the whole story of chapter 612? The expressions of the bystanders have already become very ugly. The logic is simple. If people who practice with your system cannot threaten you, and only we can, then anyone in Taichu's position will try to kill these people. This is normal. At least half of the bystanders have been leaders, so this is almost out of the question. We are the original plane, and the foundation of the universe comes from this. Xia Guixuan smiled. When you created the world, you were far from the current strength and could not create a world out of thin air, so you used our plane foundation to expand the universe. What evolved the universe is the human nature that you stripped off, which not only achieved an effect similar to beheading the 3 corpses, but also achieved the creation experiment and achieved true supremacy. Killing two birds with one stone, Taichu was silent. Xia Guixuan's analysis certainly told the truth. His eyes had seen through time and space and transcended dimensions. It was as if he was watching the Big Bang of that era, appearing frame by frame in front of him. At the beginning of creation, you were still in a state of retreat and evolution, Xia Guixuan said slowly. When you completely achieved the supreme and came out of retreat, you found that we primitive people have also developed our own practice. The wishes of all living beings and the power of the emperor can actually gather the gods. There is Nuba, where there is no rain. There is Xingxian, whose severed head is still there. Guangong het Hao, and the sky was insufficient in the northwest. Kufu chased Yanang, and his walking stick turned into a peach forest. The rapid rise of practice makes you feel that you can't continue. Taichu himself was a little dazed when he heard it. It seemed that he also saw the beginning of the universe that he saw back then. The dragons and snakes of the wilderness, the source of China thrived and grew, and the power of mankind could break the world. You didn't dare to wipe out our planet or life directly, fearing that shaking the foundation of the universe you evolved would cause problems. So you tried to stop it with natural disasters. When Mount Buzhao collapsed, you staged a flood that flooded the earth. But you didn't expect that this would become a stage for people to become saints. Some people repaired the cracks in the sky with their bare hands, and some people controlled the floods and brought peace to the 9 states, and the world was settled. The white fox nestled in her husband's arms, stopped fighting and smiled. You borrowed people's image of dragons and created the dragon god to come to the world, hoping to use this to replace the rule. But people didn't recognize this. Everyone respected the dragon's meaning, not the real dragon. The dragon god didn't accomplish anything, but was driven to the northwest of Mount Buzhao to illuminate, and was called the dragon holding the candle. Other dragons were used as mounts. In the field of great joy, the Xia Emperor Qi performed 9 generations here, riding 2 dragons, and the clouds covered 3 layers. The dragon god who was fighting with a Buddha kingdom sneezed. At this time, the ancestors may have begun to make an agreement with you. The saints hide in Kunlun and do not go out. The affairs of the world are decided by the world. The one who can connect the heaven and the earth is Zhuangzi, and it is also you. This is your consensus and agreement. From then on, there are few immortals and gods in the world. And they all return to the void of Kunlun, which is Guixu, Xia Guixuan said coldly, but the question is, who is the emperor of heaven? Of course you can't let Yan Huang or Zhuangzi continue to be the emperor, otherwise what will you do in the future? The previous agreement has cut off this path. But you can't be the emperor yourself, otherwise the meaning of the long-lasting heavenly way you created will be destroyed by yourself. So you set up the kingdom of 10,000 realms, divided into several pieces according to different civilizations, and fought each other, and they would never threaten you. It is best to destroy them all and erase your own heritage. Future generations will forget Donghuang, forget Dijin, and even forget that a long time ago, everyone had their own gods. Forget the river map in Luoshu, forget the 4 directions and 4 seasons, and integrate them into the system of later generations, then slowly cultivate people's faith in Haoshan and build a brand new heaven controlled by you. At the same time, induce the demon god Luo how to devour the planet's spiritual energy, cut off the path to earthly immortals and the path to ascension. The source of heaven and man has been cut off by you, a big chess game. From now on, native civilizations will no longer pose a threat to you. One day, even Kunlun may be wiped out by you, and there will be no future troubles. At this point, Xia Guixuan sighed. Let's talk about Ahui, Taichu. Don't say that chaos is born and the universe dies. The life and death of the universe is not even in your consideration. You have created the world just to prove your supremacy. After you have proved it, the universe is just a tool to you and has no value. Perhaps the greatest value is to observe the derivation and decline of different civilizations, which will become your nourishment after you become supreme. The final value is, watching its process from birth to death. Maybe it can make you go one step further? I don't know if washing has a peak, maybe yes, maybe not. The destruction of this universe requires a long self-collapse and destruction, not man-made. If it is embodied in human form, it is Ahua's self-recovery, gradually causing the universe to decline. You have been observing and waiting for this. The expansion of Kindling Fantasy World is just the process of you catalyzing this. In other words, it is you who really wants to destroy the world. It's just that your meaning of destroying the world is different from others, and the process is also different. The onlookers, including the people of the Eastern Emperor realm, were silent. Xia Guixuan really connected all the lines and reasonably deduced the internal logic of Taichu's actions. At least on the surface, it was impossible to refute. Taichu did not refute it either. It seemed that it didn't want to refute it. Anything else? No. Oh, wait, let me show off. Xia Guixuan pointed to his nose. Unfortunately, the biggest surprise in all the calculation stands here. Whether it is the vein of Yan Hurong or the fate of Ahuit, Taichu laughed dumbly. It seemed to be silent for a while before it slowly said, "You are right. It is meaningless for me to quibble." Xia Guixuan nodded. "Yes, you won't feel ashamed, and there is no need to argue about right or wrong, as the cold and high heavenly heart is. The heavenly way we once cultivated seems to be close to you. It seems that it can't be considered wrong. At least you are really strong this way," Taichu said lightly. "This is the right way. After separating from that funny guy, you see, she will only make trouble." Ahua was furious. "You?" Xia Guixuan pinched Ahua's hand and said softly, "But that was you. You are no longer a human, but Ahua is a human. Just as we are human. Humans have human nature, which is different from you. What's the difference? I have the favor of my ancestors, the ties of mountains and rivers, the reluctance of my lover, and the inheritance of civilization. From the perspective of the multidimensional universe, the birth and death of this universe is just an observation for you, but it is everything for me. Specifically, this place is a ladder and obstacle for you, and it is my hometown, the place where I was born and raised." Xia Guixuan said word by word. "No matter where you come from or what kind of life you are, I have no intention of exploring. Please go back to your world. This is my planet, not a place for you to fool around." These chapters are really hard to write. My wish to make up for it is still impossible to realize. Let's recommend this book. Recently there are rumors that I like to eat grass near my home. I would like to clarify that this is not a rumor. I recommend Arjun Sakayo's Urban Daily Harem novel I Really Don't Like to Eat Grass Near My Home, a full-time author with guaranteed updates. Chapter 613, Abandon All That Comes From You. Ahua acted in a mess, and was controlled to turn against him at the last minute, which was unreliable, but Xia Guixuan didn't think it was nonsense. Taichu Xiangxin was hanging high, laying out the universe, but Xia Guixuan thought it was nonsense. The chaotic and funny human nature, and the extremely cold observation, who is nonsense? This is a different path. It is also the path that Xia Guixuan hesitated for his whole life, and the final destination is still here. Why do you say there is no need to argue about right and wrong? At this point, if you win, you are right, and if you die, you are wrong even if you are right. And from the surface, Xia Guixuan has no chance of winning. He may be evenly matched with a Yuan Shi evolved from 1/3 of Taichu, and maybe he can win. But he definitely can't fight the complete Taichu alone. The teammate he brought with him, the great second defect who claimed that if something goes wrong, there is still the great Ahuit, now can't control himself and has become a burden. The teammate who had been lying in ambush for thousands of years, the sister who could have given Taichu a surprise attack at the most appropriate time, could not break through the barriers within the cultivation system, and could not do any harm to Taichu at all. The thousands of years of lurking were almost in vain. Fortunately, everyone in the Eastern Emperor realm had already retreated. After Taichu took back his power, they, as ordinary taking, could not participate in this kind of battle at all, and could not participate. The program chaos in their hearts was down, and they did not know whether they would awaken like Xiao Siming, or completely become puppets controlled by settings. Xia Guixuan had no chance to help them, and could only rely on himself. If the Yanhuang lineage and the current heavenly court could not restrain each other, this scene would be Xia Guixuan fighting Taichu alone, and he might even be beaten by Ahuit, and Xiao Siming could not help. How to win this kind of battle? Xiao Siming looked at Xia Guixuan worriedly. She could see that Xia Guixuan did not just talk so much for the sake of gluttony. In the process of speaking, he kept forcing out something. Key, or laws, or even techniques. He squeezed out everything in his body that could be used by Taichu, everything related to Taichu that he had cultivated along the way. He only kept the Star Dragon Dao that he inherited from his grandfather, and the things that he had realized over the years that were eternal, could not be escaped from in any universe, and were on par with Taichu. Virtual and real, existence and non-existence. Life and death, time and space. And so on. Almost half of the other 3,000 great ways were squeezed out, and many of the methods he had cultivated in the East Emperor realm over the years were self-erased, and a part of the cultivation key that was suspected to be related to Taichu was also self-destructed. At this time, Xia Guixuan's combat power was far less than a few minutes ago, and he had downgraded himself. So Taichu had been listening to him and didn't stop him. Xia Guixuan was downgrading himself in a disadvantageous situation, so why stop him? He felt it was interesting in his heart. This Xia Guixuan was really cruel and decisive. This kind of determination was really not something that ordinary people could do. Wasn't he afraid that he would die after becoming weak like this? What's the difference? But Xia Guixuan suddenly laughed. Speaking of which, I have never had the hobby of collecting treasures and skills in my life. I just gave away what I got. A few days ago, I even gave the Donghuang bell to Long Gaiao. I only have the Yuanting and the Juntai sword. It happens that these two are family heirlooms, the evidence of Daxia. It should be today, which is quite a bit of destiny. Taichu, you say you are destiny, have you ever calculated this? Taichu was stunned for a moment. The term destiny has different meanings at different times and for different people. For people like Yun's Hongjin Da Siming, their fate in this life is really called divine destiny. Almost every important note is arranged clearly, even if they are taking, they can't escape it. But for someone like Xia Guixuan, who jumped out of the Heavenly Dao and became an accident and is now challenging the Heavenly Dao, he still talks about the will of heaven. Don't doubt it, what I mean is that you are a fake Heavenly Dao. If you cover the Heavenly Dao of our original plane, and it is considered the real Heavenly Dao, then you have to include Ahua to count it, and only half of you doesn't count. And the reason why I have such a mysterious fate is because I have Ahua, the other half of the Heavenly Dao is looking after me. Ahua blinked her eyes. Xia Guixuan is not a person who believes in destiny at all. This sentence sounds more like a love talk to her. Is the Heavenly Dao you are talking about serious? Xia Guixuan smiled slightly. Do you want me to explain it more clearly? Taichu, aren't you talking to Ahua about love? Xia Guixuan's smile gradually became ferocious. What I mean is that you are not in your prime, so why pretend to be calm and in control? Boom. In the midst of laughter and conversation, with Xia Guixuan as the center, terrifying energy surged and exploded. Those are countless laws. The accumulated cultivation of 10,000 years is completely discarded, and all of them are transformed into the purest energy and explode. If you zoom out, you can see that the spherical airwave is constantly expanding. In just a moment, it crosses the area above the border between the Eastern Emperor Realm and Kunlun, and then deceives the entire plane of the Eastern Emperor Realm, transcends the limit of space, and reaches the Earth. From a farther perspective, as if with the Earth as the center of the circle, it begins to radiate to the entire solar system, and then spreads to the Milky Way, as if it will spread the illusion of the universe in a few breaths. In fact, it is also constantly expanding, but the energy ripples are gradually invisible, but they still exist, endlessly spreading to the entire universe, and it seems that it will spread to the Kanglong star region in a short time. It's a bit like the experience of Ahua exploding and evolving. The entire universe is repeating. In fact, Xia Guixuan was already qualified to create the world, and now the Kanglong star region is an independent multidimensional universe. The amazing thing is that despite such a violent power, no living creature was harmed wherever it passed, and not even a speck of dust was stirred up. The people in the nearest Donghuang realm only felt a breeze blowing on their faces, as if nothing had happened. Only Ahua understood what he was doing. Xia Guixuan was expelling the Taichu Qi contained in this universe. This was a battle for the universe. Xia Guixuan seemed to be squeezing pus, but at the same time, he was also attacking. Taichu didn't seem to expect Xia Guixuan to do this. The long-lasting heaven's will, which was originally invisible and intangible and could not be seen at all, was forced to occupy the universe. The qi that spread throughout the world was squeezed back and shrunk into the shape of a thick fog. The facial features of a person seemed to appear in the thick fog. They did not look the same as the previous Yuanqi, but rather like Ahua. Like Ahua, who became very ugly when she was demonized before. The immortal style and Taoist bones that had been smiling leisurely when he transformed into Yuanqi before were completely shattered. It can be said that he was forced out of his original form by Xia Guixuan. The absolute coldness, which should never have any resentment or hatred, now seemed to have a little sense of surprise and anger. After all, it really didn't want people to see its original form. Xia Guixuan looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. Chaos gathers beauty, and it also gathers ugliness. I was wondering why Ahua is beautiful, but it turns out that the ugly part is actually in you. Ha, ha 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 ha, what on earth are you so happy about? The onlookers were expressionless. Why do you feel that you are the most excited about this? Although Teichu was forced out of its original form by you, its strength did not decrease, but was concentrated instead. You squeezed out the laws in practice, and your strength was downgraded. Do you really think you can die? Teichu also said coldly, Xia Guixuan. I have to say that your mind and will are very wonderful, but, that's it. The thick fog turned into the shape of a palm and slapped Xia Guixuan in the air. Xia Guixuan was like an ant in that huge palm, and even the texture of the palm was like a chasm. This is not just the visual size. Rather, it means that Xia Guixuan's control over the laws of space has been completely crushed by Teichu, so that he cannot form a law of heaven and earth of the same size as the other party. After reducing his strength, Xia Guixuan is completely incomparable to Teichu in terms of absolute strength. But he looked up at the sky, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Ahua, I'm here. If you don't trust us anymore, we will really die here, in full view of everyone. Ahua's body suddenly disappeared. Even Teichu lost contact with his body. Instead, a huge Gundam, holding a laser sword, cut fiercely into the thick fog. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 614, Chaos in the Heavenly Realm. Before leaving, Xia Guixuan told Yan Wuyu and Ling Mozu that he would take the Thousand Edges fantasy realm with him in case of any emergency. Now that all the key related to Teichu has been squeezed out, Qianling Fantasy World is like an independent universe that Xia Guixuan carries with him, and no one can enter. Ahua's body was naturally put into Qianling Fantasy World, completely isolated from Teichu. Everyone has no body, spirit against spirit, will against will. However, Ahua habitually said I want to have a body, but in fact it was Ahua's soul that was completely out of control and fighting against Teichu. Even the laser sword is no longer the original laser sword, but the transformation of Ahua's soul. When the laser sword cut into the giant palm, Xia Guixuan also moved. The sword of Gente pierced into the texture of the giant palm. The size can't be described as a toothpick stabbing a person, it's just a mosquito bite. But this is not painless acupuncture. Poisonous mosquitoes can also bite people to death. The sword light pierced through the giant palm, and the light broke through the sky, announcing that the battle for who belongs to the way of heaven has officially begun. With a swish, the laser sword of Gundam cut the giant palm. The giant palm closed again, and Xia Guixuan seemed unable to withstand the heavy pressure, and fell down. The laser sword turned into an apricot yellow flag that covered the sky and blocked the giant palm and Xia Guixuan. The apricot yellow flag in the center was not only owned by Yuanqi. It should have belonged to Ahua. Xia Guixuan stopped in midair and turned back. The apricot yellow flag tacitly opened a gap, allowing the sword light to pierce the giant palm. The giant palm turned into a fist and smashed the two people away at once. It looked like, a bit funny? But the onlookers all looked very serious. It sounds a bit funny, but in fact, few people can catch this series of actions. It looks like a fist fight, but their speed has long surpassed light, and light is not enough to describe their speed. Teichu and Ahua are actually non-entities. This is not a collision of forces at all, but a law. It is the most fundamental law and call of the entire universe. It seems to be a punch to the flesh, but is this punch really hitting them? It was fought before eternity, and it was fought thousands of years later. The heavens and the worlds, the long river of time, all existence, were annihilated. Xia Guixuan's fall can be regarded as the past and future him, both of whom have died several times. But Ahua went from extinction to rebirth, and reshaped the past and future Xia Guixuan, returning to the origin. If Teichu was divided into two, who was in charge of life and who was in charge of death between Teichu and Ahua? Who was in charge of creation and who was in charge of destruction? It seems difficult to evaluate, as if this is a Tai Chi in itself, with you and me and you. And if one of them disappears, will the other be affected a little? Is the battle between them, in a sense, suicide? No one knows for the time being. This kind of weird battle, even if it is described, not many people can understand it, and even fewer people can understand it when they witness it on the spot. On this scene, everyone can only see that the battle between the three supreme heavens seems to have returned to its original state, just a punch and a kick. Only a few people know that if they are hit by this punch, not to mention life and death, Even their names will probably disappear. But most people can see that Xia Guixuan's side is at a disadvantage. His power has really weakened, and it seems that he is no longer able to cope with such a battle situation. Fortunately, Ahua is more reliable than ever before. According to Xia Guixuan's usual performance, does he have a backup plan? It is very likely that he really does not have one. Moreover, the disadvantage is not just the difference in power. This Taichu is too much, someone whispered in the depths of Kunlun. They can see that Taichu's attack is unscrupulous, and he does not care about the power leaking out. If he touches others, he will be annihilated in a single touch. Xia Guixuan and Ahua not only restrain their own power from spilling, but also try their best to prevent Taichu's power from spilling, so as not to hurt others. Who is their own people? Who cares about everyone's life and death? It is obvious. He protects our planet, so he has to suffer more. Taichu doesn't care about anyone's life or death, but he is even more fearless. How can this be? On the top of Kunlun Mountain, an old man in a yellow robe and an old man in a red robe sat opposite each other and slowly opened their eyes. This is really absurd. If this is the way of heaven, what kind of heaven do we recognize? Taikang is right. This is our planet, not its. What can we do about the oath? The oath of the way of heaven is limited by the way of heaven. When the way of heaven itself is being challenged, what is the use of the oath? Taikang's risk of life has made Taichu unable to take into account the power of the oath. You and I can break it. The old man in the yellow robe flicked his finger. In another distant world, above the heaven, the dragon energy suddenly boiled, and the heaven was in chaos. Haoshin was shocked and angry. Zuanilin, are you going to break your oath? The oath of the Emperor of Man is only for the people. If the heavenly Dao backfires, I will bear it myself. Even if I am reduced to ashes, what's the harm? Boom, dragons soared in all directions, jade pillars collapsed, and the entire heavenly court collapsed and became a mess. If the heavenly court is facing the outside world, it may be very strong. But if it is a civil war with Kunlun, then there is no way to fight. Too many gods conferred by the emperors of all generations, too many mortals have become saints in the flesh, and 9 out of 10 are descendants of Yan Huang, or have an inseparable origin. If the heavenly Dao is still there, it is restricted by the heavenly Dao and cannot cause chaos, but what if the heavenly Dao can't take care of it? Then who are you going to entrust to, Haoshin? How many people have achieved Dao before you? The heaven is in chaos. Invisible dragon energy flew out from all directions and faintly sank into the body of Xia Guixuan, who was fighting with Taichu. You squeezed out the Dao of Taichu? We will give it to you. Our Dao is the same as yours, responding to the stars above and touching all living beings below. Swoosh, 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 4 gods appeared faintly in the 4 directions of heaven and earth. There used to be backup images of them in Kindling Fantasy World. Guangong, Ziyuring, Jumeng, and Rushao. Now they are real. 4 directions, 4 seasons, 4 seasons. East, south, west, north, spring, summer, autumn, winter, gold, wood, water, and fire. They represent the 4 directions of up and down, the past and the present, and the beginning of the 5 elements. Being our backup in Kindling Fantasy World, trying to replace us one day, do you really think we have no temper? The 4 directions and 4 seasons gathered together, reflecting each other with Ahua fighting in the center. The 5 elements went back and forth, the planes condensed, and the meaning of chaos rose to the sky. Countless dragon-shaped phantoms poured into Xia Guixuan's body. Xia Guixuan, whose strength had been reduced, had a vigorous momentum that could be seen with the naked eye. In just an instant, he returned to his original level, and even surpassed it. Clang, the sword light surged and pierced the sky. Xia Guixuan, who was about to fall back after receiving a punch, was completely supported by Ahua. At this time, he waved his fist to block Taichu's huge fist, and did not retreat even an inch. Following the will of heaven is to respond to people. Xia Guixuan waved his sword and pointed, if the way of heaven is not kind, I will take over. Chapter 615 Can we win? Taichu's face was as gloomy as ice. It was too lazy to say anything more to Xia Guixuan. It had already attacked recklessly just now. It was not because it did not expect Yan Huang to be provoked and rebel, but because it knew that as long as Xia Guixuan and Ahua were killed quickly, other things could be solved later. After all, no one else was supreme here. But it did not expect that Xia Guixuan would accept the power of all living beings so easily, as if it was originally his. This made things a little tricky. This was not very scientific. Theoretically, Yan Huangde and others were higher than Xia Guixuan in this regard, much higher. Xia Guixuan, such a stinky and incompetent king, has always been a stinky younger brother who was ridiculed in terms of the dragon energy of the common people. This has nothing to do with cultivation. How can he be reverse compatible and represent Yan Huang? Taichu did not understand the hearts of Yan Huangde and others at this time, because they did not put themselves in a high position. This is inheritance. If the descendants of our family can stand tall and upright, then just leave everything to him. How could it be incompatible? Even though Taichu had observed this old tradition of the Chinese people, which was passed down from generation to generation through blood and torches, for countless years, and even though he thought he understood it on paper, he never felt at home with it in his heart, and could never put himself into it. This time, Xia Guixuan's strength skyrocketed, and Taichu felt a little regretful. If he had not acted so recklessly just now and had taken the locals' feelings into consideration, he might not have provoked such a strong backlash. It was all Xia Guixuan's fault for forcing his true form out. For a moment, he felt that he had completely exposed his cards and there was nothing left to pretend. In fact, he could still save his image. It was not necessarily Xia Guixuan's fault, but rather it was its own fault, because the chaotic desire for destruction in its heart could no longer be suppressed. The more harmless and fun Yahoo was, the stronger its desire for destruction became. Just like a seesaw, one side would go down while the other side would go up. It was originally two sides of the same coin. Taichu couldn't understand it even more. Ahua was originally quite resentful, and the evolutions were always about the dead world and the moon, so how did she become more and more harmless? If you can't understand it, you don't need to understand it. Just understand how to beat Xia Guixuan. His thoughts flashed by, and the clouds of Taichu had condensed into two swords, one to hold Ahua, and the other to slash down at Xia Guixuan. Xia Guixuan swung his sword and was startled. When the two swords intersected, there was no difficulty in the collision of laws as before, but he felt that he had lost something. He lost his connection with Kunlun, cut off his fate with Ahua, and wiped out his friendship with everyone in the East Emperor realm. It was as if he was alone between heaven and earth. Break the cause and effect. Maybe some cultivators dream of it, but Xia Guixuan is the opposite. Xia Guixuan's current path is maintained by this. Once it is broken, it is equivalent to being useless. You are really good, this method is very high. It's a pity that it's useless. You can't surrender my weapon, the Sword of Gente, a ritual vessel for sacrificing gods. Is related to the East Emperor realm. The 9 cauldrons of King Yu, the inheritance of the family, the bloodline and the intention of the emperor are tied here. The East Emperor's robes, woven by my sister. The underwear was sticking to the little fox, and the little fox jade pendant still had his soul fragment, which had never been broken with the Kanglong star region. The Qianling fantasy world was hidden on his body, and Ahua's body was hidden in the Qianling fantasy world. All the women had his oral liquid on them. So Taichu was shocked to find that the cause and effect line was all concentrated on him. No matter how he cut it, it was like cutting water with a knife. It seemed to be cut, but it was still flowing. Just as he was stunned, Ahua's laser sword swept across and stirred the Taichu fog into pieces, and all his facial features were stirred up. At the same time, the 9 cauldrons roared up, like 9 range hoods, sucking the thick fog into the cauldrons. Taichu discovered that these 9 cauldrons, 1 cauldron for 1 world, each cauldron had the sun, moon, stars, and the universe. Each cauldron was a world. Dividing it into 9 worlds to contain it, maybe it can really be completely suppressed inside. Roar, a strong wind blew. The Taichu fog turned into a tornado, confronting and colliding with a section of the 9 cauldrons. The 9 cauldrons shook violently for a moment, making a clang-clang sound. Xia Guixuan's supreme instrument actually had a little crack. Blood flowed from the corner of Xia Guixuan's mouth. The damage to his instrument would definitely backfire on him. This might be the first time he had been damaged since he inherited the 9 cauldrons. But he didn't stop, but increased his strength. The strong wind swept across the world, and the earth rolled up to the sky. The onlookers in the distance had to use their own magic weapons to block it, otherwise they would be blown to ashes. Of course, there were not many people watching. The heavenly court over there had already been in chaos, and now it was even more chaotic. When the strong wind passed by, there were heavenly soldiers and generals who screamed and turned directly into ashes. Ahua's Gundam shell was also swept away, and it was bare. It was also in gaseous form. But her gaseous form was a little different from Taichu. If Teichu was a raging tornado at this moment, Ahua was a restraining breeze, almost merging with Teichu's tornado, and tightly confining Teichu to the range of the 9 cauldrons. Anyway, if everyone is absorbed by the 9 cauldrons, it is Xia Guixuan's territory. He can come out, and Teichu will wait for death inside. It's a bit like Ahua grabbing Teichu and pressing him into the cauldron. Ahua finally stood up. This scene, the Yanhuang lineage was all moved. It seems, can win? Yes. Xia Guixuan has discovered that Teichu is not as strong as imagined. It's not just the factor of separating Ahua. In addition, part of its strength must be restrained by other aspects and not fully exerted. The reason is very simple. If the creation of the world is regarded as the supreme watershed, the world created by Xia Guixuan is at most a Kanglong star field, which contains 7 or 8 realms such as the Netherworld, forming a multidimensional universe. It seems awesome, but the size is still limited. Compared with the universe created by Teichu, it is not even a village. Everyone is expanding based on the original foundation, and none of them are created out of thin air, so there is nothing to say. The huge gap in size is the embodiment of hard power, which is very intuitive. Taking into account the stripping of Ahua, Teichu's strength was halved, but it was still enough to crush Xia Guixuan. That was the accumulation of countless time and space, far from comparable to his accumulation. Now Kaiang is indeed very strong, indeed stronger than Xia Guixuan, but I really don't feel the gap that should have been crushing, so that Xia Guixuan feels that with Ahua, there is a chance to win. There is no other reason except being restrained by others. Xia Guixuan's mind flashed some people he had met before. They seemed to have all gone out of China and achieved enlightenment in other realms. Is it them? It is very likely. If they have achieved the supreme, even just half a step, they will definitely sense the haze of their hometown. Although they should have left this mess alone, after all, they are already living happily as the main gods in their own realms, but the old place is the old place after all. Grandpa said before that the galaxy fleet accidentally lost its way to Kanglong Star, and it is very likely that someone made a move. Now it seems that someone is playing chess with Teichu, well, or simply put, this is secretly moving Teichu's chess, which is a bit mean. Of course, Teichu is too strong, and it was unrealistic to expect others to fight desperately. The original intention of letting the galaxy fleet stray away might just be to preserve the fire, but it provoked the awakening of Kanglong. In this game, Xia Guixuan, was the protagonist of course, no matter from which angle. He shouldn't rely too much on others. Thank you, he suddenly whispered. I don't know how many people outside the realm, someone rubbed the ball, you're welcome. I mean, you may not win this battle, come on, Lao Xia. Someone clapped his hands lightly with a folding fan, not knowing whether he was talking to himself or advising, Brother Xia has a fatal flaw. Don't be careless. Xia Guixuan's ears twitched, as if he sensed something. He raised his eyebrows slightly, did not answer, but the action of driving the 9 cauldrons became more determined, as if he would use even the last bit of his strength. Burn the boats, if you don't succeed, you will die. In the tornado of the 9 cauldrons, countless points of light appeared, as if thousands of eyes were staring at Xia Guixuan's eyes with hatred. You think, you won. I fell asleep again yesterday and woke up in the middle of the night. Sigh. I don't dare to boast about making up for the update, just bear with it, you can see that it's almost over, but not in these few chapters, it's not that fast. Chapter 616 Xia Guixuan's biggest flaw. Crack, as the voice sounded, the crack in the center of the 9 cauldrons of King Yu, which seemed to be so solid that it would never be damaged, finally began to expand. The breath of the universe in the cauldron overflowed, and only a trace of it overflowed. The vast and majestic breath surged and shook the chaotic heaven in the distance. For a moment, the heaven was actually holding its breath, and all turned their heads to look in the direction of Xia Guixuan. Countless people were shocked and awed. Without facing it directly, we will never know what level the intensity of the battle between Xia Guixuan and Teichu has reached. Before this, Xia Guixuan had absorbed too much of the power that Teichu had overflowed. On the surface, the confrontation of punches and swords was even a bit clumsy and funny. Until this moment, people knew what the concept of 2 universes colliding was. Just a trace of the terrifying power contained in the overflow was enough to smash the entire heaven to pieces, leaving no residue. And he has 9 such cauldrons. No wonder he doesn't want treasures. What is the use of other treasures? This is the natal cauldron, and the power of the cauldron represents Xia Guixuan's own accumulation of practice. Assuming that the first step to create a small world is considered the threshold of entering the supreme level, Xia Guixuan is about equal to 9 such supremas at the same time, but on the surface, he is just to the level of entering the supreme level. Finally, I know why he can always be invincible at the same level or even beat people across levels. The truth of his invincible record is revealed, because each level of his is equal to 9 times the accumulation of others. I wonder if the enemies who died in his hands over the years will be so angry that they will crawl out of the coffin and die again. I thought I was fighting an opponent of the same level, but I didn't expect to fight against 9 times. Beat your sister. What's more terrifying is Teichu. Because such a terrifying 9 cauldrons formation was actually broken by Teichu. This is still under the premise that Ahua is tightly entangled with it. It can really be said that it takes no effort for it to destroy an ordinary plane. The cracking of the cauldron made Xia Guixuan pale, and his injuries became more serious, but he did not retreat but advanced, flew up, and sealed the crack with his palm. Bang! The raging wind that destroyed everything swept wildly, and this time Xia Guixuan really had no spare energy to help others block it. The battle was already at its most intense stalemate. It was just a matter of a hair's breadth. Either Teichu entered the cauldron, or Xia Guixuan and Ahua collapsed. At this most stalemate moment, a bare hand silently appeared on Xia Guixuan's back. A trace of sorrow flashed across Xia Guixuan's eyes. He simply had no energy to dodge the blow. Ahua's angry voice rang out in the strong wind, "Xiao Siming, you!" Bang! Xiao Siming's palm hit Xia Guixuan's back hard. The Donghuang robe that she had woven herself and strengthened just a few days ago dutifully blocked the blow for her master. The fierce energy burst out, causing Xiao Siming's long hair to fly back, revealing a pair of completely colorless gray eyes. The Donghuang robe shattered into pieces, flying in front of her like a butterfly, like a broken dream between the two. Xia Guixuan spat a mouthful of blood on the cauldron, protecting the shaky cauldron tightly, but not saying a word. It seemed that this betrayal had dealt him an outrageous blow, which had already broken his usually calm thinking. Ha, ha ha ha, Teichu's loud laughter came from the strong wind. Xia Guixuan, your thinking has always been meticulous and cautious. Have you really never thought that you still have such a big flaw? Xia Guixuan gritted his teeth and said nothing. Of course he knew. Even if he didn't know, someone would have secretly reminded him. But it was still the same result. Teichu laughed and said, when you dispersed my ki around and forced me out of my original form, why did you forget that Xiao Siming also has my ki in her body, and she will still be controlled by me? Maybe you didn't forget, you didn't want to touch her, because you were worried that she was created by me. Once my ki was forced out, she might die. Your emotions will eventually kill you. This is your path. Ha ha ha. The sadness in Xia Guixuan's eyes became more and more intense, and Xiao Siming's eyes were as cold as death. As Teichu spoke, his tone became more and more proud, and he said leisurely, you two were acting so sweet and affectionate. I knew it from the beginning that she sent you to the Tai stage. It was quite fun for you to play house. So Xiao Siming's sneak attack on me before was what I had been waiting for. Do you know why I waited for her to expose herself instead of eliminating her in advance when I knew everything? Xia Guixuan finally said, for this moment, that's right. She betrayed me at the last minute, so you wouldn't be on guard against her anymore. Even if you felt that there were hidden dangers in her, you wouldn't be so determined to get rid of them and would hope for the best. This slight emotional wavering affected your usual calmness, which is the way for you to die, Xia Guixuan sighed. In fact, there is no need. Because no matter what she does, I won't be on guard against her, nor will I do anything that might kill her. Teichu, Ahua was furious. Xia Guixuan, you stinky licker. You will not die well, Teichu was saying. Speaking of this, there are some things that I still cannot understand. You know that you had sex with Athena in order to transform her body and avoid being controlled by me. But you have been hiding in the East Emperor realm for so many days, knowing that Xiao Siming has the same hidden danger, but you are respectful to her and can't even touch her. Why is that? Xia Guixuan answered calmly, I don't want to be with my sister for the first time for this kind of thing. The onlookers widened their eyes in shock, more shocked than when they saw him in the 9 Cauldrons world. Ahua didn't even have the energy to curse. Xia Guixuan, who had been a master all his life, really fell for such a ridiculous reason? But this reason seemed to be true. If this is the path he has determined, should we say that women really affect the sword drawing? Teichu seemed too lazy to complain. For a moment, Teichu even felt that it was not worth it to be forced to this extent by such a fool. Let's end it. Clang clang clang. The 9 cauldrons shook violently, and the tornado roared, and it was about to break free from the section force that the 9 cauldrons had always maintained. At the same time, Xiao Siming, who had been pressing on Xia Guixuan's back, surged with strength in his palms, cooperating with Teichu to give Xia Guixuan the final blow. Ahua was almost in despair. Her ability was only enough to entangle Teichu, and it was not enough to help Xia Guixuan reverse the situation. I didn't expect that Ahua, was finally reliable for once, but it was Xia Guixuan who was unreliable. Is this retribution? Oh, wait a minute, what is that? Originally, Xiao Siming at this moment could not be considered Xiao Siming. She was just a body controlled by Teichu, and even her energy was Teichu's. Similar to the previous use of the formation of Taiyi platform to achieve supreme power, it was actually using the power of Teichu. But at this moment, Ahua keenly felt that the energy that Xiao Siming entered into Xia Guixuan's body had changed. Is that Xiao Siming's own power? Before she could react, Xiao Siming's power merged with Xia Guixuan's, and through Xia Guixuan's palm, it heavily slammed into the tornado that had just left the cauldron. Roar! The tornado gathered into clouds again, and let out a painful roar that shook the earth. Ahua was surprised and happy. Teichu was injured. At that moment, Teichu was definitely the most relaxed and self-righteous. Just when he wanted Xia Guixuan to die under Xiao Siming's palm, he was hit fiercely by the energy of the siblings. At the moment he just broke free from the 9 cauldrons. Accurate and fierce. The onlookers were already stunned. What was going on with this dizzying change? Why could Xiao Siming break free from Teichu's control? She was obviously unable to cause harm to Teichu before, why could she do it now? Isn't fighting these days about fists, but about brains? Chapter 617. When you were present from nothing to something, only Ahua could understand what happened after careful consideration. The key point was the scene where Xia Guixuan forcefully kissed Xiao Siming in public. At that time, Xia Guixuan must have quietly passed on his ki to Xiao Siming, and in the midst of the Teichu ki in Xiao Siming's body, he quietly protected Xiao Siming's spiritual platform. This allowed Xiao Siming to maintain the last bit of lucid spiritual light while being controlled. This move was done very covertly. Teichu didn't notice it, and even Xiao Siming herself was kept in the dark. She was dazed by the kiss. Once Xiao Siming noticed it herself, it meant that Teichu might know, and once Teichu knew it, it meant that Xiao Siming might be eliminated. Xia Guixuan really had good intentions. Even Xiao Siming himself didn't know, let alone outsiders. Even those distant allies couldn't find this subtle detail. Everyone's attention was on the shocking scene of Xia Guixuan kissing his sister in public. This hidden side effect is that when Xiao Siming was just controlled, he couldn't struggle at the first time. The first palm attack was indeed completely unconscious Teichu's power. Xia Guixuan really took this blow. At the same time as taking this blow, Xiao Siming's palm was in contact with Xia Guixuan's back. Xia Guixuan took the opportunity to communicate his energy retained in Xiao Siming's body through this contact and awakened Xiao Siming's consciousness. So Teichu's ridicule was just giving Xia Guixuan the opportunity to awaken Xiao Siming, and finally seized the moment when it was most relaxed and gave it a fatal blow. Is it a typical villain who died because of talking too much? No, because he hasn't won yet. Teichu was indeed injured, but how much better could Xia Guixuan be? It was just an injury for an injury. One of his 9 tripods was cracked, and his face was as pale as gold paper, and it was about to fall. It looked like he was almost out of fighting power. Boom! The injured Teichu's violent natural counterattack was tightly entangled by Ahua. Xia Guixuan could not withstand the power that was released. He groaned and was pushed back for tens of thousands of miles. Xiao Siming desperately protected him in front of him, holding him and flying back, tears in his eyes, taking. Xia Guixuan shook his head slightly, and there was no joy in his eyes for the successful prevention. Instead, he still had the same sorrowful look as before, and looked at Xiao Siming steadily. Xiao Siming knew what he was thinking, and whispered, "Taking, I won't cause trouble for you." She suddenly held the sword in her hand and committed suicide. Snap! Xia Guixuan grabbed her wrist, and the sword almost cut across her snow-white neck, leaving only a shallow blood mark. "Taking," Xiao Siming said resolutely, "you and I can't protect it, my body will only be used by it again. You are now a man of great stature, you can't be fussy about this matter and miss the great cause of the world. Let go." Xia Guixuan smiled slightly. "The world? If you die, what use do I have for the world? Xiao Siming stamped his feet. She simply didn't know what to say. At this time, she was still saying such earthy love words. Let's not talk about whether the world will be the world or not, but if the situation of this war tilts again, you will die first. It's okay, sister, Xia Guixuan whispered, we will definitely find a way. As long as we are alive, there is a way. Believe me, Xiao Siming stared at Xia Guixuan in a daze. He was seriously injured, but his eyes were staring at each other. Xiao Siming had thousands of words stuck in his throat, but he couldn't say a word. That palm back then. This palm now. The person who can hurt Xia Guixuan has always been her, Xiao Siming. But he doesn't care, he just hopes that she lives well. She was indeed Xia Guixuan's biggest flaw. It was not unreasonable for Xia Guixuan to want to give up. Emotional ties would indeed drag down the battle. But today, the reincarnation is over, and all the right and wrong are no longer mentioned. Xiao Siming wanted to say something but couldn't. Suddenly, she leaned forward and kissed Xia Guixuan's lips hard. She was injecting her only life force, which she had secretly accumulated over the years, into Xia Guixuan to heal his injuries. Even though she knew it was a drop in the bucket. After all, her own ability was only taking, and the injury was already at the supreme level. Obviously it didn't have much effect. Xia Guixuan still happily hugged her back, and the two kissed each other while flying backwards. I don't know if it was really the trajectory of being knocked away, or if it was so happy that it flew backwards. Because of Xiao Siming's initiative to kiss, it completely announced that the grudge between the two had been settled. In Xia Guixuan's heart, it might be a little more important than defeating Taichu. For him, this was the end of his life's pursuit. But the next moment, a terrifying explosion sounded at the place where Ahu and Taichu were fighting, and Xiao Siming's eyes became gray and ruthless again at this moment. The onlookers didn't know whether Xia Guixuan kissed Taichu at this moment, and no one had the leisure to distinguish, because Xiao Siming's sword had stabbed Xia Guixuan's ribs again. Xia Guixuan said it didn't matter, there was a way. But did he really have a way at this moment? What about Ahu? From Xiao Siming protecting Xia Guixuan and flying back, to trying to commit suicide but being stopped, to the two of them kissing lingeringly, it's a long story, but in fact it only took a few breaths, and the battle between Ahua and Taichu had reached a critical moment. The fighting mode of these two is very special, and no one can understand it at all. Because it is the entanglement of two energies, visually it is a ball of thick fog. You are in me and I am in you. If you don't practice enough, you can't even tell that there are two life forms in this ball of thick fog. Even the breath is very close. They can really be regarded as one life in theory. To describe it more intuitively, it is the confrontation of two personalities in a person's brain, just like the little angel on the left who often appears in elementary school students' essays says that the dime should be given to the police uncle, and the little devil on the right says that since no one sees it, why not buy popsicles yourself? No matter which idea, it is actually the real person. The entanglement of Ahu and Taichu is actually just which personality suppresses the other. As for whether they can merge or devour after suppressing, even Xia Guixuan can't judge. But neither side has the intention to devour the other. Ahua was originally separated by Taichu, and Taichu didn't want this humanity at all. Ahua has no intention to merge with Taichu, and she only hates Taichu. Then destroy each other. Both sides burst out with the power of world destruction almost at the same time. Before, Ahua's strength was definitely not as strong as Taichu's, but now that Taichu was injured, the two sides were evenly matched. This explosion almost caused both sides to wither together, and they could not even maintain the shape of thick fog. Only the light and clear air like air remained. Both sides were injured. Ahua immediately escaped into the Qianling fantasy world that Xia Guixuan carried with him to find his body. In this situation, the soul body could not support the battle, and the body could still fight again. As expected of the same person, Taichu also made the same choice. The body it chose was naturally Xiao Siming. It was originally its creation and could be used as its carrier at any time. In fact, it could choose Yun's Hongjin Da Siming, but which choice had so many functions of Xiao Siming? While possessing Xiao Siming, Xia Guixuan could be killed. Could Xia Guixuan, who was seriously injured, still withstand this sword? But Xia Guixuan did not dodge, and let the long sword pierce his ribs. At the same time, his palm suddenly attacked, and a mysterious seal shape slapped on Xiao Siming's forehead. Taichu, Xia Guixuan smiled with difficulty. Teichu is the beginning of Qi, invisible and traceless, omnipresent. It is almost impossible to destroy you. But there is only one situation to try. That is, when it creates a clear body from nothing. Teichu suddenly became angry. What did you do to this body? How? Do you feel that you can't get out and are completely sealed in this body? Xia Guixuan smiled weakly. There is no other reason, just because sister is wearing a wedding dress stained with my blood. Chapter 618. Wait until the blood of Xia Guixuan covers the body, and Xia Guixuan's final seal suppresses the spirit platform and makes the wedding dress permanent, so that it cannot be taken off. Teichu, who was also injured and weak at this time, could no longer break through the encirclement of the net of heaven and earth, and was completely sealed in the body of Xiao Siming. The vitality in the universe was greatly lost, and everyone in the heavenly court found that they could not sense the existence of any spiritual energy. Because from nothing to something, it has all returned to one body. To be honest, even Teichu, who was forced to this point by a series of backup plans, couldn't help but have a little admiration for Xia Guixuan in his heart. This Xia Guixuan may not be the top in terms of wisdom. If he is in military, domestic and diplomatic planning, etc., he may be beaten by his own little Zhulanggao, and he can't compare with the one holding the fan in the distant plain. But in terms of combat wisdom alone, he can really be said to be invincible in the world. Whether it is pre-war planning or wartime response, he has achieved the extreme. There are many seemingly nonsensical or seemingly just for picking up girls' behaviors, but it was discovered afterwards that he had his thoughts in them. Coupled with his equally top-level combat power. How many opponents died in the past really deserved it. But now Xiao Siming is in good health and has enough strength, while Xia Guixuan is too injured to even speak. Ahua's body can still be influenced by him, and may not obey Ahua's orders. Ahua cannot interfere here in the short term. As long as Xia Guixuan is killed quickly, this most troublesome opponent will disappear, and he can slowly solve the seal problem in the future and come back to deal with Ahua. Teichu said nothing more and wanted to draw out his long sword for another fatal blow. But when he did so, his soul suddenly felt a sharp pain, and Xiao Siming's consciousness frantically stopped it from moving. Teichu quickly suppressed Xiao Siming's consciousness, and saw that Xia Guixuan's eyes also became gray and cold at this moment, as if he had become a different person. The next moment, Xia Guixuan put his palms together and slapped Xiao Siming's chest heavily. Teichu, it spit out a mouthful of blood, and as the blood mist dissipated, the entire plain of the Eastern Emperor realm was hazy and turned into a bloody world. The blood color exploded, and the entire plain turned into ashes. Ahua flew out of the Qianling fantasy realm, and immediately threw Xia Guixuan into the channel she had brought with her, which had not yet been installed, and sent Xia Guixuan directly back to the Kanglong Star region to avoid the terrifying impact of the explosion of this plane. Then she wanted to leave. But with a glance, she saw the gods of the Eastern Emperor realm standing stupidly on the Taiyi platform, as if waiting to die. Ahua pursed her lips, and finally did not leave. She opened her defense tightly to protect the creatures of the entire world. Boom, the Eastern Emperor realm exploded and disappeared. All the creatures were ejected from the main plane of the Milky Way under Ahua's protection. Teichu had already disappeared, and no one knew where he had gone to recover from his injuries. Ahua sneered, the devil of destruction? Who is destroying the world now, and who is saving your lives? All the creatures in the world were silent. Yun's Hongjin, Da Siming, Dongjin and others knelt in the air and bowed to the east. Your Majesty. We were wrong, don't shout, Ahua said angrily. Put your heads over here, let me confirm whether you will become Teichu first, otherwise I will chop you to death one by one before we tell right from wrong, Yun's Hongjin said. From the moment Teichu was transformed from nothing, the cultivation in our bodies disappeared. We are now sure to find ourselves, just like Xiao Siming. If you don't trust us, it doesn't matter if you kill us. Ahua was silent for a moment, snorted, forget it. In fact, in his eyes, you are always his people, I can't kill you casually. Yun's Hongjin pursed his lips and said nothing. Are they all his people? But everyone feels guilty. Da Siming couldn't help but say, Your Majesty's last look was. Ahua seemed to have just remembered, and suddenly jumped up, let's go, hurry back to Kanglong Star region. Xia Guixuan, this idiot, sealed his own memory in order to force himself to hurt Xiao Siming. He is a fool now. If he runs into the center of the battlefield, he will be finished. Yun's Hongjin, Da Siming, Ahua led them to fly quickly towards the direction of Kanglong Star region, and his tone was somewhat helpless. Just now I might not be able to control my body. Guixuan himself was also seriously injured, and Xiao Siming was intact. If I continue to be fussy, Taichu will kill them all by using Xiao Siming's body. Therefore, he must let Xiao Siming be seriously injured, and everyone will fight to recover, and wait for the future. We still have Kanglong Star region as a backing, but Taichu has no more tricks. This is the only solution. The initiative from now on is on our side. Yun Hongjin and Da Siming looked at each other. In order to let himself be willing to beat Xiao Siming, Xia Guixuan actually sealed his own memory. Is this considered covering one's ears and stealing the bell? No, it was because he knew very well that he could not use heavy hands on Xiao Siming under clear consciousness. Such a passionate person, but we could not see it before. Everyone seemed to be blind. I thought he could really turn around and leave like in the fantasy world, Ahua said with some regret, but he licked her. He really hurt Xiao Siming. Do you think this is still considered a licker? Do you want him to be a licker or not? Yun Hongjin could not help but say, this is cause and effect. When Xiao Siming heard His Majesty, she was actually timid in her heart. She thought she acted hatred very well, but I could hear it when she played the piano. Now they don't call Xiao Siming His Majesty. The His Majesty in their hearts is just Xia Guixuan. Speaking of the acting skills of the brother and sister, no one has ever been deceived. Ahua nodded slightly. Maybe. She has to be given a real slap in return. This seems to be a knot in Xiao Siming's heart, and it has been resolved from now on, and it has completely come to a complete circle. Even Ahua can use the word Zihazia. The world has changed. The great god of destiny said, Your Majesty, there won't be any problem with sealing your memory? He should be able to recover soon. I don't know. Logically, he should be able to figure out the way out. He's not stupid. Not only is he not stupid, but all the gods in the Eastern Emperor realm think that His Majesty is simply amazing. Others are calculated by the heavenly Dao, but he has calculated the heavenly Dao with a lot of question marks on his forehead. Now they are probably confused. Ahua raised her head and looked in the direction of the Kanglong Star region. Let's go back to the Kanglong Star region. That's the foundation of everything. If we lose the war, we'll be finished. It's useless to calculate more, Yun Hongjin said. Since you can send His Majesty directly there, why don't you do it now? Ahua glanced at them and focused on a few men. Bah, you are worthy. The great god of destiny. Yun Hongjin was also confused. Seeing that Ahua refused to open the plane channel, of course no one could force her, so he had to accompany her to fly silently. In fact, everyone was confused, and whether or not the plane channel could be opened was no longer the most important thing for everyone. Everyone moved forward silently and quickly for a while. Yun Hongjin couldn't help but worry and asked, Your Majesty, are you very confident about the war over there? But what? At least right now Gaia and the others can't do anything about the defense of the Kanglong Star Field, but we who use the Teichudeo have almost completely lost our strength now. Gaia Emer's level over there may not be subject to this limitation, but what about others? Most of the ways practiced by the descendants of the Kanglong gods are also the Teichudeo. Zelter can even be regarded as a Teichu creation. Perhaps only the technology of the humans on Kanglong Star can break away from this limitation. Can they fight this battle alone? I'm afraid they can't even preside over Your Majesty's 3 realms in one formation. Ahua looked into the distance dimly and whispered, Who said that everyone over there is practicing the Teichudeo or Teichu creation? Yun Hongjin, do you mean that some of the descendants of gods are also practicing Your Majesty's methods? At least there is a little tiger, whose bloodline comes from China, and whose skills are modified by me. Little tiger, yes, her name is Fat Tiger. Yun Hongjin wanted to cover his face after hearing this name. It seems that she was the one who brought the silly little fat tiger disguised by His Majesty to Xiao Siming, and now I know that the silly guy is actually herself. P.S. It's the last 2 days of the month. Do you still have money? Chapter 619 The beginning of the cosmic collapse. Xia Guixuan and Ahua fought against Teichu for quite a long time. It was the longest, most difficult battle Xia Guixuan had fought in all these years. But in terms of the duration of an interstellar war, it was not that long. It should be said that the war had just entered its stage. Everyone was fighting against each other, and the battle was very intense, when suddenly they found that the energy of the universe had become extremely thin. It was a bit like the feeling that after Ahua recovered her parts, that area became empty, losing its soul, its vitality, and its energy. This was the manifestation of the return of all the energy of Taichu to one body. It was not that the energy of Taichu was scattered throughout the universe, and the one that fought against Xia Guixuan was weak, and that it would be stronger when it was gathered into one body. This was not a meaning. When it was scattered throughout the universe, it was actually a bit like everyone was fighting in its body, and where its energy was did not affect its strength. If it was gathered into one body, it would only change from a state of unpredictable and unknowable to capturable, and perhaps the strength would be more concentrated, but in fact it would be easier to deal with. Of course, this is Xia Guixuan's perspective. On the battlefield of the Kanglong Star region, everyone could only feel that the spiritual energy was gone, and even some laws were no longer applicable. There were problems with their skills. For a time, the battlefield was in chaos, and the entire battle was inexplicably suspended. The most seriously affected were the Greek and Nordic giants led by Gaia and Ymir. Where did the earth come from? True native giants. They were completely primordial creations. The primordial energy disappeared, and they even had problems with their existence. Some weak bodies began to fall apart, and the slightly stronger ones also lost their strength and could not even stand in the void of the universe. The second most affected were the Zelt proto-energy clan. What is the cosmic primordial energy? It is the primordial. The key at the beginning of the formless period separated the light and darkness. This energy is the so-called most original energy of the universe, which is the primordial energy. The life derived from this light and darkness is the Zelt proto-energy clan. They were not created by the primordial, but they were actually derived from the primordial. The primordial is their true father god. Oh no, mother god? In short, the disappearance of the primordial key almost destroyed the premise of their life. Fortunately, they were not created, but were the normal life forms of men and women who bred and bred, and they had their own consciousness, but their bodies were getting thinner and thinner, and the red and white colors of the high-level light temple and dark temple were almost invisible, and they could not use any energy magic. Their technology was also disabled, because Zelter's technology research was also based on the research of cosmic energy. At this moment, even more than half of the warships were useless. The Zelter beasts were relatively better, although they were also quite miserable. They were a race created by Dijun using the treasure of life, and they were only responsible for killing and not burying, and they were not responsible for spiritual intelligence. Among them, Dijun was created by Taichu. And the so-called treasure was also a natural creation in the universe, which was actually the secretion of Taichu or Ahui, and they were inseparable. The disappearance of the primordial key made the beasts dumbfounded, and all the flesh and blood magic they used to use was invalid. The only advantage was that the flesh and blood power of the body was still there, at least it was not so weak. They are like this. What will happen to Yawu, who combines the advantages of the energy race and the beast race? Yawu, however, is not affected at all. In her hand, there are suspended the four magic weapons of time, space, light and darkness passed down from Xia Guixuan. Xia Guixuan's four laws of time, space, light and darkness are all self-realized, not given by Taichu. It is something that is applicable no matter where in the universe and in any dimension, not unique to Taichu. Xia Guixuan's laws covered and replaced the disappearing Taichu key at this time, maintaining Yaowu's practice. At this moment, Xia Guixuan really became Yaowu's father god. Yaowu looked at the magic weapon in her hand, her face slightly red, but she didn't have the time to act like a child. She immediately threw the mirror of light and the veil of darkness into the void. The light and dark energy are intertwined in this universe again. At least in the range of the Kanglong star field, the power of the two yin and yang is completely replaced by Xia Guixuan, and it has nothing to do with Taichu anymore. The two tribes of Zelt were in chaos for a while, and then they recovered completely. Gaia on the other side could not do something similar. Although she was also a world-creating deity, and theoretically was also differentiated from Ahui, she was not on this star field. Her real name was once taken away by Xia Guixuan, and she could not exert the power of creation here at all. She could only watch the giant army collapse completely and die in the overwhelming encirclement and suppression of the two Zelt tribes. What was even more infuriating was that there was always Athena pestering her. Now that Gaia herself was somewhat affected, Athena seemed to be completely unaffected and became more and more courageous. Gaia could see that Athena's physique had been completely washed, and she was no longer the original Athena created by Taichu. She was really in the shape of Xia Guixuan all over her body. What was disgusting was that her attacks on Athena would be blocked by the thin curtain of the formation, but Athena's attacks on her had no effect at all. Her weapon was still the true god-slaying spear, and she would lose a layer of skin if she was hit. This battle was really impossible to fight. Gaia completely lost the will to fight, waved her hand to block Athena's spear, and fled quickly. The Earth Giants, who had come with such a strong momentum, were completely annihilated by the overwhelming attack of the two tribes of Zelt. The Gaia Legion was just a microcosm. Other battlefields were very similar. The Nordic giants and the Buddha kingdom had lost a lot of their combat power, but the gods and dragons who were on the opposite side were not much better. They all weakened together and stopped fighting in the melee. Ymir and Tathagata led the giants and Buddhas to withdraw. The casualties were not heavy, which was much better than Gaia's annihilation. The two parties gathered together, and Gaia also came together at this time, opening up a plane to temporarily station, intending to discuss the next move after Qiao Xingxian and others met. As a result, after waiting for a long time, Qiao Xingxian did not come. Will the whole army be wiped out? Ymir was very surprised. Are human warships really that strong? Gaia was very embarrassed when the whole army was wiped out, and sneered, what I am afraid of is not the whole army being wiped out, but the whole army surrendering. Tathagata said slowly, it won't come to this. Qiao and Xingxian are not the kind of people who surrender. Gongsun Jiu is eloquent, I'm afraid he is not worse than you Buddhists. Didn't you hear the speech before? Everyone was silent. Qiao and Xingxian are not on the same side with him, but on the same side with Kunlun and Xinting. These lineages are always entangled with each other. It's hard to say what choice Gongsun Jiu will make. Gaia sighed, let's not talk about them, we have to find out what happened to Teichu and Xia Guixuan first. Now this is simply the end of the universe. Ymir shook her head, I'm afraid, it is. They can all sense the result of the battle between Teichu and Xia Guixuan, and what Teichu knows is what they know. Ahua fully recovered and became an adult, and Teichu became an adult from nothing. This is indeed a sign of the contraction of the universe. It is very likely that the universe, which has lost its energy, will begin to collapse, starting from the distant periphery and collapsing all the way to the Milky Way. It has not collapsed yet, but it is just because of the residual inertia of the plane, or it has begun to collapse, but the universe is too big and has not yet been reflected here. This process will not take too long. In a few days, the total collapse of the universe will be reflected. This is not a problem for the gentlemen present, they can open up planes at any time and create earth, water, fire and wind. However, if the Kanglong star region lacks Xia Guixuan, it may not be able to withstand this kind of cosmic collapse. At that time, this hard bone can be collectively killed without a single soldier. Besides, based on what they know, Xia Guixuan is no different from a half-dead person at this time. He was thrown into the passage by the confused Ahua alone. The unconscious Xia Guixuan cannot choose where to appear, which means he may appear anywhere. If everyone goes to search at this time, it would be fun if they could bump into Xia Guixuan. Thinking of this, everyone looked at each other for a while, with ferocious intent in their eyes. The Kanglong star region must not know the situation of their father god at this time, but we have some advantages. If we can find where Xia Guixuan appears before them, then everything will be settled. Chapter 620, It's Better to Go Back. Gaia and others' guesses about the battle situation of Qiao were half right. Qiyu and Xingdian did not surrender to Xiao Jiu, nor did they go to meet them, but withdrew. In fact, their strength was not affected much, because they were also indigenous people like the Yan Huang lineage, especially Xingdian himself was from the Yin Emperor lineage. They were the spirits condensed by the will of all living beings, not the primordial creation. How the energy of the universe shrinks has nothing to do with them, including the heroic spirits under their command. Coincidentally, their opponents were not affected either. The human technology tree was completely in a different direction, an alien in the world of cultivation. The chaos in other battlefields did not affect this sub-battlefield at all. Originally, this was the most powerful and suspenseful confrontation at the moment, and the victory or defeat could determine the overall situation. But as they fought, Qiyu and Xingdian slowly stopped. The will of Yan Wang, the dragon energy of the common people, all gathered to Xia Guixuan. Qiyu turned his head and looked back in a trance. This was a situation that he had never even thought of in thousands of years. The entire Yan Huang lineage, all the will of the common people, gathered to one person. Theoretically, if Qiyu returned to fight back, he could avenge the Battle of Zulu. Of course, this could not be done, At least Xingtian beside him was the first to disagree. Xingtian was also in a trance, this breath of destruction, the cold feeling of destruction. I originally thought it was chaos, but this is the image of Taichu. On the contrary, chaos's image at this moment was very gentle, like a little girl in love. I thought Taichu represented the way of heaven, and we were stopping chaos from destroying the world. Yan Huang favored Xia Guixuan because of blood. Xingtian whispered to himself, "It turns out that your majesty is not confused, it is me who is confused." Qiyu turned his head and looked at the flagship in front of him. The faint gun barrel flashed with a cold light. The previous words of the girl with glasses still echoed in his heart one by one. "At this moment, we are Xingtian, and you are just waving Gan Qi to chop at the ghosts of your descendants. The way of heaven moves forward, and when the times do not need you and me, then retreat. What you and I inherit is only the spirit." Guangxin Jiu took action and resigned the throne in public. Qiyu never doubted whether she would go back on her word and ascend the throne again. The difference in their cultivation was too great, and it was impossible to hide the truth from the perception of the mind. Qiyu knew that every word she said was true. It was not a speech, but a heart-to-heart talk. And every word she said was exactly what they were doing on Kunlun now. The descendants of the world do not need a real Gongsun Zui standing in front of them, nor do they need a Xiaoyu and Si Wenming to talk to you. Yan Huang and Xiaoyu are just spiritual inheritances. Until now, there are Gongsun Jiu and Xia Guixuan. There will still be descendants thousands of years later. You and I just need to watch the flowers bloom and fall quietly on the top of Kunlun. The descendants are so powerful today that they can smile. Why should they come out again? Their hiding is a consensus and true meaning, and they have never been trapped by Taichu. Qiyu and Xingtian looked at each other and suddenly felt a little bored. This battle is meaningless. Like a fooled clown, he was performing a clumsy performance that did not belong to his own era on the stage of the interstellar era. He had defeated himself. It was better to go back. The two were distracted, and Xiao Jiu in the warship raised his hand slightly, signaling the fleet to stop attacking, as if by tacit agreement. Qiyu looked up, looked at the warships that had tacitly stopped firing, and smiled slightly. "This is your era." Xiao Jiu did not answer. But he saw the primitive army retreating in an orderly manner, without a word from beginning to end. Yan Wuyu looked at the image of Qiyu and others retreating in amazement, and said in surprise, "Is this really a demon god? Why does it feel so reasonable? Even if it is a demon god, Taking's temperament is no longer comparable to that of ordinary demon gods. What's more, the so-called demon is often just a different path, or a change of mind, not a fixed label." Ling Moxu next to him said calmly, "Ahu is actually a demon, but now, who can tell who is the demon between her and Taichu? It's just like Tai Chi, black and white are mixed and changed." Xiao Jiu looked at Ling Moxu in surprise. "Hey, big-breasted and brainless, have you been possessed?" Ling Moxu is too lazy to pay attention to her. "Since Taking's temperament is different from others, am I not half a step into Taking now? Is it strange that I have realized something? My divine consciousness can even sense the situation in other war zones. It's basically a crushing victory, and you, a fool, don't have time to receive new information. Really, it's like being too familiar and having no sense of distance. In the eyes of the enemy, he is a very respected and elegant opponent, but in the eyes of his own people, he is a fool, a idiot, a flat, a stinky and arrogant person who deserves to be plucked by his master." She said unhappily, "Master repelled Ymir, Xia Long repelled the Buddha kingdom, and Sister Yao Wu wiped out Gaia's army, and only Gaia escaped. What does the marshal think of the current situation, and what follow-up work do we need to do?" Xiao Jiu was stunned and frowned slightly. Xiaoru's previous communication said that everyone suddenly lost their practice. Ling Moxu nodded. "Most of the descendants of gods, as well as all the Zelt and dragon tribes, and the opponent's giants, you should be able to judge the reason, the contraction of the primordial key. Don't ask me why it contracted and disappeared, I don't know. I can only say that this is why some of the descendants of gods can maintain their combat effectiveness, just like Hunan, who are all pondering the darkest part of the master's heart in their bones, and have little to do with Taichu." "Xiao Jiu," Ling Moxu said, "don't have an idiotic face, as if you don't know how bad the master is." Xiao Jiu said helplessly, "That's not what I meant. I was thinking that the other party should not have retreated far. Now the situation is particularly favorable for us. We should take the initiative to attack and search for the other party's hiding base." Ling Moxu raised her eyebrows. The other party has the supreme. You don't rely on the master's formation to defend, and take the initiative to attack and seek death. Xia Guixuan smiled slightly. Don't worry about it, big breasts and no brains. Ling Moxu almost wanted to pinch Xia Guixuan until she was swollen. Yan Wuyu hugged his shoulders and watched, feeling that he was also cuckolded. In the past, it was obviously her and the marshal who had more ambiguous rumors, but now looking at the little expressions of these two, she actually felt that she had become an outsider. She interrupted the atmosphere of the two who were about to fight in a bad mood. Search separately. This time the spiritual energy change should be related to the battle between Lao Xia and Taichu. I am a little worried. Xia Guixuan and Ling Moxu were not worried. They trusted Xia Guixuan too much and felt that the guy could never lose. In fact, Yan Wuyu was not worried either. He just said it with his mouth, and it was also a reason to persuade them to stop fighting, otherwise the two would be soy milk on the spot. You humans are so discordant on the mountain, how can you fight with those vixens in the future? Anyway, this reason finally stopped Xiao Jiu Mozu from getting angry. Ling Mozu turned around angrily and said, don't arrange for me to be in charge of your fleet anymore. Fighting with a fleet is really not my strong point. I'm going to find Master and team up with her. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 621 Mozu said that fleet combat was not his strong point, so Ling Mozu still took the transport ship led by Maya on the way to find his master. In this battle, Maya was responsible for logistics dispatch and maintaining smooth routes within the star field. He did it in an orderly manner. His achievements were not obvious, but they were very important. Ling Moxu looked at the funny mushroom that was getting fatter and fatter, and felt a little weird. Everyone has changed a lot over the years. How can Maya now look like the sloppy pirate when he first met her? Even the jester look later is less, and he looks more and more calm, and has the bearing of a high-ranking person. Maybe it is the smartest and the most progressive with the times. The master needed a jester who could let him let go of his moral integrity, so Maya was a jester. Now that the master is a sea king, what he needs is a helper who can do the right thing, so Maya does the right thing. The same is true for Hunan. Hunan Maya is obviously not a good thing, but under the master's command, they are all famous generals and important ministers, and they are more serious and loyal than anyone else. So the key is to see what kind of person the king is. But what kind of person is he? Ling Moxu stood in the command cabin on the top of the transport ship, watching the stars change outside the window. Her eyes were a little confused. She found that she seemed to be unable to define Xia Guixuan. Is this called not understanding her man? Not really. Ling Moxu felt that she understood him very well, and she knew what he was thinking with just one look, but she couldn't define a complicated person like him, and she was not as smart as Xia Guixuan. At first, it seemed that there was nothing to understand, but it was a conquered master-slave relationship. But he hadn't treated himself as a little slave girl for a long, long time. She could see the love and tenderness in his heart, and she indulged in it. It was a pity that she said she wanted to be his left and right arm, but she was ultimately limited by her strength. What she did now was actually not much different from a sword servant, and she had always been an assistant. Ling Moxu really hoped to perform more in this battle. It was okay. Holding the Zuinin sword was awesome. When Qiyu attacked the flagship, she was chopped back by her sword. There were countless strong heroes who died under her sword. But in the eyes of outsiders, the glory was mainly focused on Xia Guixuan. Ling Moxu hopes that she will have more opportunities to show her abilities in the next battle. She doesn't know that in the eyes of others, her growth is the most impressive. The command cabin is divided into two layers, upper and lower. Ling Moxu stands on the upper floor, while Maya looks up at her straight figure below, feeling a little strange. Ling Moxu feels that Maya has become bigger. Maya knows that she has not changed much, but she changes her mind and does whatever the boss likes. If there is any change, it is just that she has more power and may be more generous. This Ling Moxu has really changed a lot. In the past, it was said that she had a sword heart and sword bones. That was what Xia Guixuan said. Who can refute Xia Guixuan? You can only say yes, yes, yes. If you say she has it, then she has it. At that time, it was hard to say whether Ling Moxu herself believed it or not. To outsiders, she really didn't have it. She was just a proud little princess, quite selfish and self-righteous. She looked cold and arrogant, but in fact, she was full of grass in her head. There are a lot of such little princesses in the second generation. Apart from their family background, there is really nothing outstanding about them. Guangxin Jiu obviously looked down on her. In the early years, Moi didn't think much of her either. He didn't dare to show it on his face. In fact, he encouraged Xia Guixuan to play with her. In essence, he used this kind of woman as a tool and a stepping stone to advance his career. He didn't take her seriously at all. I don't know when it started, but even passers-by could see her swordbone. The same coldness, which one is due to the superiority and indifference brought by family background, and which one is the real sword hidden in the heart, cold and sharp. These are completely different feelings. For practitioners, that feeling may be more intuitive than changing your makeup on your face. She cut Gong Gong Rushao, Fuachi using Dawn, and how much blood of gods was under her sword. The distance between humans and gods was so close. She went on an expedition to Zelter and rushed to Qianling Fantasy World. Every time she faced an enemy that seemed much stronger than her, from Qianling to Wushan, she risked her life and went forward. It doesn't have to be a glorious victory. Every ordinary soldier who fights for the country has an equal and huge role. When this sword fights to protect Qianling and for the compatriots who trust her behind her, this is Zuinellen. She felt that she didn't play a big role and was a little anxious in her heart. In fact, her efforts will naturally be seen by everyone, and people respect this heart. She used to be checked by the guards for her ID when she entered the warship, but she was just a star. Now all the soldiers see her from a distance, and their first reaction is to stand at attention and salute, solemn and respectful. Ling Moxu at this time is no longer the same as before. The sword edge is sharpened by blood and fire, so sharp that people can't open their eyes. Well, just don't bump into her Xiaojiu. Otherwise the status of both of them will be lowered at the same time. When she stood alone by the cabin and looked at the moon, the coldness of the sword and the innate arrogance and nobility were combined. That temperament and beauty were really unique in the star field, which could make Maya dare not look straight at her and would unconsciously lower her head. If it were to come up with some bad ideas to tease Ling Moxu at this time, it would not even be able to think of such a thing. Maya, Ling Moxu looked outside the cabin and suddenly called out. Maya subconsciously bowed below. General, please give me your orders, General. Ling Moxu pondered the word and laughed. This mushroom is really a smart guy. She was very satisfied with this word, nodded and said, how long will it take to reach the master? Why do I think you are going back to the direction of Qianling Star? Maya said, the high priest is stationed in the Temple of Heaven. We can either go back to Qianling Star and take the ladder from the Temple of Demon Capital, or go around from the outer boundary above the star field, which is the route of the enemy's attack. Of course, it is safer for us to go to the direction of Qianling Star. We don't know if there are still enemies wandering outside the boundary. It's not safe. Ling Moxu thought for a while and said, let's go outside the boundary, Maya, the internal routes of the star field. It's just like that. Since you call me a general, wouldn't it be killing two birds with one stone to regard this voyage as a patrol? Maya thought that this is just looking for trouble. Of course, someone has to do the patrol, and its own pirate ships are also patrolling outside. It is normal for Ling Moxu to want to take a look along the periphery. In fact, the enemy has just retreated, and it is unlikely that they are still wandering outside the boundary at this time. Isn't that courting death? With that in mind, I decided not to spoil her fun and smiled, then changed to the second route. Ling Moxu nodded, and without saying much, she continued to look out the window quietly. The figure was motionless, like ice and sword. Moya sometimes felt that Ling Moxu might not be as cute as before. She was less and less willing to communicate, and she had turned herself into a sword. She was too obsessed in her heart, always wanting to spur herself on, in order to stand by that man's side. On second thought, in this state, Xia Guixuan might be an obstacle to Ling Moxu's path. Her obsession was too heavy, and it was difficult to prove that she was too clear. She could never cross the half-step difference, and maybe that was the reason. If she could get rid of all her obsessions, the sky would be high and the sea would be wide, and her mind would be open. With her current accumulation, she would almost certainly be too clear, without suspense. But this matter. How dare Moya say anything? Just pretend to be blind. Anyway, her man is the supreme god, and Xia Guixuan has his own ideas on cultivation, and he doesn't need others to say anything. Just thinking about this, Maya's eyes, which were lazily looking at the display screen, suddenly widened, and then became wider and wider. Ling, Ling, Ling. Jang. Jang. Ling Moxu turned her head and glanced at the big screen unhappily. If you have something to say, just say it directly, stuttering. Baba. Baba. Her eyes were also wide open, and she was dumbfounded. The void in the distance ahead seemed to have a crack, and a figure fell out in the flash of thunder, just hanging in the void, floating up and down, seemingly unconscious, dying. The appearance of this person was projected on the big screen. Exactly like Xia Guixuan. A Buddha's light suddenly appeared from a distance. Sure enough, he's here. Ling Moxu's eyes instantly became murderous. Chapter 622, The Battle for Xia Guixuan. In terms of the perception of fate and cause and effect, the Buddhist practice is still better than that of the West. Everyone dispersed to search the outer periphery of the star field at the same time. The sense of the mysterious in Tathagata's heart was much more accurate than that of Gaia and the others. In such a huge star field, if you really want to find someone who appears out of nowhere, it would be more exaggerated than looking for a needle in a haystack. Moreover, they cannot go deep into the star field. If Xia Guixuan appears inside the star field, everything will be in vain. However, the probability of Xia Guixuan appearing inside the star field is much greater than the probability of appearing outside the edge. After all, it is the three-world integration array he built himself. The protection of the array will not isolate him from the outside. God knows that Xia Guixuan is in a coma and really can't enter the integration array he built. He can only appear on the periphery. So originally, this so-called search can only be regarded as a blind cat catching a dead mouse. It is a bit of a gamble to express that although the army was defeated, it is still trying hard. But Tathagata just feels that there may be something to be gained in a certain place. So he followed a fate in his heart and came here. Sure enough, not long after arriving nearby, he ran into a big fish. The awakening of Buddhism is still very tricky. Tathagata observed carefully at the first time and found that Xia Guixuan was indeed in a coma. Even with his calm mind, he couldn't help but feel ecstatic. This fish is too big, no one can keep calm. He saw the transport ship appearing in the distance, and had no time to care about it. He grabbed the floating Xia Guixuan with a Buddha's hand. It was just a transport ship, focusing on space and speed. The war equipment it carried was very ordinary, not at the same level as the Galaxy flagship. It was just a patrol passing by, and it was impossible to stop him. He is the Buddha Tathagata. After all, he created a half-step supreme world in the Western paradise. Clang, almost at the same time as he made his move, the brilliant sword light illuminated the universe. It was more dazzling than his Buddha's light. A girl in white clothes merged with the sword and crossed the vast space in an instant, and the sword light pierced the Buddha's palm. The expression was so angry that she was almost crazy. Zuanin sword, Tathagata flashed this word in his mind, but he didn't care too much, and the Buddha's palm grabbed it as it was. The difference in cultivation was too great. He could crush this woman to death with one palm, just like crushing a mosquito, and it would not affect the capture of Xia Guixuan at all. Compared with the huge Buddha's palm, Ling Moxu's body was indeed like a mosquito, and her strength was indeed like an ant trying to shake a tree. But the mosquito in the Sumeru had a burning look in its eyes, and the coldness and determination in the depths of the flames were as if it was going to die. Bang! The sword light pierced the Buddha's light, and Ling Moxu fell backwards like a kite with a broken string, but a ray of sword energy pierced through the Buddha's light, and the resolute sword light did not stop, rushing straight towards the Tathagata spiritual platform. The Tathagata withdrew his hand in pain, and returned his hand to disperse the sword light, and finally felt surprised in his heart. A sword that burns life, to make a move is to risk one's life. Perhaps all lovers in the world can think of it, but practitioners who cut off worldly ties often cannot understand it. For example, Buddha. The misjudgment of the first attack caused Tathagata to lose the chance to catch Xia Guixuan. Just as he turned back to disperse the sword light, the transport ship in the distance had already quietly opened a space black hole, and whoosh sucked Xia Guixuan into the transport ship. Then he turned around like crazy and rushed back to the Three Realms formation. Tathagata, what a miscalculation. Human space technology is not only able to teleport by itself, but also to recall in reverse. I thought a small broken transport ship was useless, but this is a big use. But can this transport ship go back? Even if it only takes 1 second, this second is like a natural moat. Bang! The Buddha's light exploded directly in front of the transport ship, without any need for a pursuit trajectory. The transport ship shook, and a soft white light emerged from the inside, covering the ship. The Buddha's light did not cause any damage. Tathagata called it a miscalculation again. Even if Xia Guixuan was unconscious, his instinctive defense was not something that ordinary people could break, so he used grabbing before, knowing that he could not kill him directly. As a result, he forgot about it after being disturbed by Ling Moxo in the transport ship. Tathagata changed his tactics urgently, and the Buddhist voice permeated the universe. It is not too late to turn back. The transport ship was about to turn back uncontrollably. Clang, another sword whistle, and Ling Moxo, who seemed to fall like a kite with a broken string, once again blocked Tathagata with his sword. Tathagata glanced at the transport ship in the distance. The transport ship was still spinning in the same place. Even if the Three Realms formation was just around the corner, it could not go back. Tathagata confidently withdrew his gaze, looked at the woman in front of him, and frowned slightly again. The woman's mouth was still bleeding. The previous blow had directly injured her, but she just held on tightly, like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, and blocked the way again. Terrible will, unbreakable sword bone. Is she not afraid of death? He finally couldn't help but speak. Are you Ling Moxo? Ling Moxo said coldly. Shut up. Tathagata shook his head slightly. Just confirming your name, nothing else. No need to be so alert, Ling Moxo said lightly. Between you and me, we only talk about life and death, not names, just like I don't want to know who you are, whether you are called Amitabha or Tathagata Buddha. You don't have to be so eloquent. From now on, I will block my hearing and seal my divine thoughts. Tathagata, is this called directly blocking and not chatting? But this is the most correct response. With a practice of both parties, Ling Moxo will definitely not be able to withstand the brainwashing of the Buddha's voice and the eloquence, so he doesn't listen, speak, or see. Just swing the sword. This is a truly clear sword heart, 1 in a million. Where did Xia Guixuan dig out the seedling? Forget it. I saw your ambition to become a bodhisattva. Since you refuse to convert, then reincarnate. As the voice sounded, the Buddha's palm slapped down again. This is really to beat Ling Moxo into powder, and then deal with the transport ship over there. Ling Moxo took a deep breath, raised his sword, and stabbed the sky. Ascending the sky and embracing the comet. The sword technique taught by Xiao Siming was also the strongest skill Ling Moxo could use at this time. In theory, this was actually a skill of the beginning of time, and it could not be used. But Ling Moxo, like Athena, had already been in the shape of Xia Guixuan. This sword was similar in form but different in spirit. It was a fusion of Xiao Siming and Xia Guixuan's intentions, and it was the strongest sword. Boom, the sword and the Buddha's palm faced each other again, and the dazzling glare made the surroundings vast. At this time, the transport ship suddenly ejected a section of the cabin and directly ejected into the Three Realms formation. It was obvious that all the people in the transport ship, including Xia Guixuan, were in this section of the cabin, leaving only the empty shell of the ship that was controlled and could not move, spinning in place. Tathagata was shocked and angry. Are you guys playing tricks? He was really not good at these technological games. The transport ship could not even feel the energy fluctuations, so why could it do so many tricks? The palm strike lost its power as his mind shifted. Ling Moxo didn't even get hurt and ran back. The master is safe. Only a fool would fight with you. He ran away. Tathagata was stunned. Where is the determined swordsman? Are you kidding me? This really made the Buddha angry. Tathagata was furious. Stay, the giant palm slapped again. In the distance, meteors shot out, and a Pegasus came from the sky. The terrifying spear shadow broke into the giant palm from light years away. Time and space seemed to have completely lost their meaning under her speed. Xiaoyu arrived. Tathagata looked at this awe-inspiring centaur girl, and knew clearly in his heart that this battle for Xia Guixuan was really lost to a female swordsman who had not even achieved taking and a transport ship that was not even a fighter. It was not enough to count her sword heart and sword bones. It was not enough to count the advanced civilization technology. Times have changed. Mistakes everywhere, just like an old player who can't keep up with a new expansion pack. Sometimes I think that some of Taichu's ideas are not without reason. Xiaoyu, who was standing in front of him, was sneering. Some things should be sealed as old expansion packs, so just return to the abyss honestly. Why come out and embarrass yourself? How about leaving you the title of Classic Old World as a token of respect? Chapter 623 The General and the Boy. Shuang's Haoi is much stronger than Ling Moxu, a real taking, and her arrival means that Long Gaiao, Yin Xiaoru and others are also approaching with their troops. Ling Moxu returned with confidence and caught up with the ejection escape capsule. The so-called escape capsule can still be combined into a complete spaceship, not just a small room. Ling Moxu stepped into the capsule and did not see Xia Guixuan at first glance, but Maya came out from the house with a strange look on her face, hesitant to speak. What's going on? Ling Moxu grabbed it anxiously. What happened to him? Actually, he woke up. Moa scratched her head and said, he woke up when he activated his defense passively. It's just what? He didn't recognize me, and said that this mushroom looked delicious. Ling Moxu, then, Moa said hesitantly, I felt that his breath was very weak, and there was no sense of oppression as before. Could it be the bloody plot of the old martial arts novels, with all the power lost in amnesia? This is too ridiculous. Novels haven't been written like this for hundreds of years. Ling Moxu, she was stunned for a long time, and suddenly pushed Moa away and strode into the room. There were several medical staff on board in the room, surrounding a water bed. Xia Guixuan was soaking in the healing solution, and there were several metal tubes connected to the healing solution on the side. The medical staff were recording data next to the screen. Seeing Ling Moxu coming in, everyone bowed respectfully. General Ling. Ling Moxu nodded, looked at Xia Guixuan's blank eyes, expressionless. How is he? His body has suffered extremely terrible energy damage, but it is miraculously healing itself. Our healing fluid has almost no effect. It can't even penetrate his cells. It is rejected by himself. In fact, he doesn't need our healing fluid, then why is he still soaking in it? It's just a routine record. But we suspect that the equipment is damaged because of the war just now. The vitality of his surface cells is at least 1 trillion times that of a normal person. Just count the grains of sand in the gangs, Ling Moxu complained. No, General Ling, a nurse complained, what woman could withstand his hardness? The medical staff were secretly looking at Ling Moxu. Most humans don't know Xia Guixuan's true identity. In order to cooperate with Xiao Jiu's ideas, he has always downplayed the significance of the gods, resulting in the memory of this face in the hearts of humans. Ling Moxu's first screen kiss, rumored boyfriend. It seems that it is just a rumor. If it is true, General Ling would have died long ago. Ling Moxu had a straight face and was expressionless, but he felt a little relieved. It seems that Xia Guixuan's injuries recovered very quickly, and the little nurse could gossip about him. At least he will not die. The problem of the soul is not something that can be investigated by the medical equipment on board. Most of them have to go back to the Kanglong Star Human Medical Center. Or forget it, let Long Gaiao and the others take a look. I asked you to treat the disease, not gossip, Ling Moxu said with a straight face, waving his hand. He is a special gene warrior. This kind of conventional treatment can't see anything. Remove these things and go out. The medical staff removed the equipment as instructed, wiped Xia Guixuan clean, carried him to the bed and laid him down. Packed up and went out. Ling Moxu stood quietly by the side, looking into Xia Guixuan's eyes. Xia Guixuan had been awake, but his injuries were serious and he couldn't move for the time being. His eyes were bright and full of spiritual light, as if he was curious about everything, pure and clear. Like a newborn baby. Ling Moxu was looking at him, and he was also looking at Ling Moxu. It was not until the medical staff had gone out that he carefully asked. They said, I'm a contracted artist of your company. Ling Moxu was amused. Is this how they introduced our relationship? Okay, very good. She felt strange, and crossed her arms and said, yes, do you want to see your contract? I'll show it to you when I return. No, I believe it, so pure? Ling Moxu couldn't help asking, why are you so gullible? Xia Guixuan said seriously, because of the blood on the corner of your lips. You are a respectable general. Ling Moxu's eyes moved. It seemed that some past events flashed through her mind. The first meeting that year. The general worthy of respect in his heart was Yan Wuyu, and she, Ling Moxu, was a vicious villain who destroyed the Great Wall for her own selfishness. So she was trained to be a slave girl, without any pity. And today's first meeting, he said, you are a respectable general. Ling Moxu slowly closed her eyes. She remembered a lot more. She forgot when she said it, or maybe she just imagined it in her mind. If one day he lost his power, she would train him into a slave and let him have a taste of it. Is there such a thing? There must be. but she has long forgotten when it happened. She closed her eyes and said in a dreamy voice, "Do you know that the so-called artist contract is not much different from slavery in many cases?" Xia Guixuan said, "Are you such a person?" Ling Moxu opened her eyes and said sternly, "Yes." Xia Guixuan looked into her eyes steadily, pursed his lips and said nothing. Ling Moxu couldn't suppress her emotions, and said like a ghost, "Kneel down and call the master." After saying that, she suddenly felt so good. So good. Even in terms of cultivation, it seemed that the threshold of taking had shown signs of loosening this day, and she didn't know if it was an illusion. Is this the cause and effect? But Ling Moxu didn't know whether she expected him to really do this. If he really did it, would she be very disappointed? If he did this, would he not be worthy of being Xia Guixuan, but just another person with the same face? Her heart was in a mess, and she didn't know what she wanted to do. Her face was as cold as frost, and her eyes were as sharp as swords. Most people would tremble and kneel down if they were stared at by such eyes. But Xia Guixuan stared at her for a while, his eyes still clear and pure. "If I want to kneel down to the general, I hope it's for another reason. You don't want to kneel down slowly on the bed?" Ling Moxu suppressed the question that almost came out of her mouth and forced herself to say lightly, "What's the reason?" Xia Guixuan said seriously, "I can't call someone master. Maybe I have forgotten a lot of things, but I can be sure that this kind of thing is impossible for me to do, and it will not be what I will do in the future. Because that is not me, and it will never be me. The general is lying to me." Ling Moxu felt relieved inexplicably. It was still him. Xia Guixuan, who never gave up, was still himself even if he forgot all his memories, and the pride in his bones had never been erased. It was obviously that she wanted him to taste it, but he refused, and she was relieved and happy for him. Ling Moxu is such a jerk. You still want to turn over like this? You are so disappointing. She took a deep breath. "I asked why you would kneel down, not why you didn't kneel down," Xia Guixuan said cautiously with a little expectation. "The general's sword just now was as high as the sky and the moon, as rustling as stars, as if all the mysteries between heaven and earth are included in this, which is what I yearn for. Can I learn sword from the general?" Ling Moxu suddenly felt dizzy and cold sweat oozed from her palms. Certain past events flashed through her mind again. In the ice and snow, he was teaching herself swordsmanship. The girl grew up to be a powerful general, and he came back in reincarnation to learn sword from the general. The general and the young man stared at each other, and it was a glance that lasted for 1,000 years. Chapter 624. When he fell to the mortal world, Ling Moxu was wondering if at his level, even filming a movie was a flag. Maybe it was just a coincidence? It wasn't his coincidence, but Ling Moxu's. So she was the first to appear at the place where he fell. What would she do when all the plots that she had imagined, expected, and thought of really appeared in front of her? At least the first assumption has been broken. She really can't make him a slave, and she doesn't want to see him bow his head at all. That's not the Xia Guixuan she wants. But does she want him to be her apprentice? Just like he once took her to stroll in Zelter, and was her teacher all the way. Ling Moxu's lips moved, and she tilted her head slightly in Xia Guixuan's expectant eyes. "Whatever you want to learn, I will teach you. There is no need for master and apprentice." Xia Guixuan blinked in surprise. Ling Moxu complained to herself, "I'm not like some people who are self-righteous and like to teach others. Everything they say can become a sermon, and even dating can become teaching a disciple." Xia Guixuan, why do I feel that the person you are talking about is a little familiar? Ling Moxu turned back, and for some reason she felt much more relaxed, as if some of the things that had been entangled in her had disappeared unconsciously, just like she had just gone through a dream, and her obsession had dissipated in the dream. She smiled slightly. "Do you think our conversation is a little strange?" Xia Guixuan shook his head. "Whether the conversation is strange or not is another matter, but this girl is really beautiful." The iceberg-like expression suddenly smiled, becoming more beautiful, like spring returning to the earth, and like a snow lotus blooming on a snowy mountain. Why didn't he doubt the so-called artist under his company? Not only because he saw her fighting for her life and felt that she was worthy of trust and respect, but also because he felt that this girl was very familiar at first sight and was someone very close to him. His judgment was correct. How could someone like Xia Guixuan seal his memory in a one-time deal without any way out? Sealing memory is not amnesia. The memory is still in the depths of the soul sea, but it is wrapped by one's own soul power, like a capsule. As time goes by, the capsule will dissolve by itself, and the memory will awaken. In fact, It will not take a few days. If there is no external influence, it will only take 3 days. If there is a liar who really wants to fool him, he will wake up after 3 days, and the liar's ashes will be scattered. If there is external stimulation, such as this conversation with a familiar girl, he may be fully revived while talking. In addition, the strength is only due to the injury and weakness, and the temporary forgetting of the lost skills caused by the sealed memory. The memory is revived and the healing is healed, then the combat power is restored, and there is no so-called loss of power. Of course, if this kind of injury is self-healing, it will take years and years. If such a huge force is mobilized to find medicinal materials, it will be very easy. So there is nothing wrong with Xia Guixuan's decision. As long as Ahua is reliable, there should be almost no danger. Fortunately, it is still safe, or we should thank the girl in front of us. The so-called amnesia and weakness under this premise are obviously not dog blood as Maya thinks, but more like a kind of turning back. Fill in some unfinished connections, make up for some incomplete gaps, and get into the knots of some people. Xia Guixuan finally said, I don't think there's anything strange about her conversation. The girl is very kind. Can you be considered kind by asking you to kneel down and call me master? That's obviously not what the girl really meant. Ling Moxu curled her lips. You are so capable, I really force you to kneel down and watch you cry. Forget it. She sighed, walked slowly to the bed, and stretched out her hand to take Xia Guixuan's pulse. In a normal conversation, the focus should be on asking about your injuries, not slaves or apprentices. Xia Guixuan was stunned, but he felt that it was true. Why did he feel that this obviously wrong topic was normal? Is it because the relationship between him and this girl is closer than he thought? Ling Moxu lowered her head and said softly, in fact, I should have paid more attention to the injuries. I couldn't help it. She paused, didn't say anything, just lowered her head to check her pulse. When her eyelashes trembled slightly, there was a softness and confusion that was completely opposite to the previous battle. She has a faint body fragrance, which smells good. Her fingers are soft and smooth, which feels very comfortable. The blood on the corner of her lips has solidified and has not been wiped off. Xia Guixuan looked at her, and somehow reached out his hand and gently wiped her blood. Pa! Ling Moxu suddenly waved his hand away, and pointed her finger at his throat like a sword. Respect yourself, Xia Guixuan hurriedly said. I didn't mean to be frivolous. Whether you did it intentionally or not, Ling Moxu said lightly, not everyone with his face can touch me. Without his memory, he is not him. Xia Guixuan looked at her in a daze. So you mean, I can touch you after I regain my memory? This relationship. Is it a girlfriend? Should I have taken this opportunity to instill in you a little more awareness, such as, you like Ling Moxu the most and should treat Ling Moxu better in the future? According to common sense, this awareness should still be imprinted after the memory is restored. Ling Moxu said calmly, forget it, maybe I am stubborn, maybe I am big-breasted and brainless, I can't do it, and I will never be better than those foxes. Xia Guixuan felt her headache. I don't know why there is a kind of emotion called heartache, spreading inexplicably. Some emotions are surging, washing the capsule wrapped in soul power, as if it is about to melt. Ling Moxu finally moved her fingers away from his pulse. This injury. If it were me, I would have died long ago. I can only say that you are worthy of it. But can you tell me, why is this sword wound that pierces the ribs the sword of Xiao Siming? Did she betray you? Xia Guixuan's head hurt even more. Some pictures flashed chaotically, and some names stubbornly hit the sea of consciousness. Ling Moxu, Little Fox, Xiao Siming. How did he get this injury? I feel like I have something very important to do, the sooner the better. Someone is wearing a wedding dress, waiting for me to save. Knock knock, there was a knock on the door. The two turned their heads and saw Shang Zhaoi leaning against the door with his arms folded, as if he had been watching for a long time. Ling Moxu stood up a little embarrassedly. Master, how is Tathagata? Shang Zhaoi shook his head. He retreated after just a few moves. I guess he was afraid of being surrounded by us. He was even more afraid that the Father God would recover quickly after entering the star field. How exactly is the Father God injured? Ling Moxu said, I'm not good at these, and I can't make an accurate judgment. I feel that his pulse is very weak. Shang Zhaoi finally walked to the bedside and looked at Xia Guixuan's face with a strange expression, but he didn't intend to check the injury for a long time, as if he was obsessed with looking at this face. Ling Moxu coughed dryly. Master, Shang Zhaoi suddenly laughed. Really? When he was here, I respected and loved him. So fanatical that I felt like my brain was not my own. But after he fell into the mortal world, he didn't have the urgency to welcome back the glory of the Father God. It's really strange. This shouldn't be the thinking of a high priest at all. Ling Moxu blinked. Is it because? I think he is actually quite cute like this. Shang Zhaoi laughed. Indeed. He is not high and mighty, not serving, not a subordinate, no poet, and doesn't want to ride a horse. He is just a very cute, smart boy who has a strong interest and curiosity in everything. I think, when he embarked on the path of cultivation, he should have been such a boy. This is the boy that Xiao Siming saw. This is his true nature. Ling Moxu curled her lips and said, I thought his true self was a big sex maniac. Cough cough. Xia Guixuan's dry cough interrupted the conversation between the master and a disciple. Could this him you are talking about be me? Shang Zhaoi ignored him, and suddenly asked Ling Moxu, hey, what do you say? Take advantage of his current state, flip him over, and let me ride on him. What do you think? Xia Guixuan. Ling Moxu laughed. Master, you can try it yourself, just like I tried before. Forget it. Shang Zhaoi stretched lazily. I'll contact Long Yao and tell her not to come over. It's more important to find medicinal materials first. You should accompany him more during his early recovery. Ling Moxu blushed. Master, don't get me wrong, I'm not biased to give you an opportunity. Shang Zhaoi smiled. It's just that I think your path to taking lies here. Chapter 625 If this is not love. P.S. That in the previous chapter was not a thunderbolt, but a portrayal of Mozu's personal character. Don't really take this as a thunderbolt. There has never been such a thunderbolt, otherwise how can I write about contact later? It seems like I have dug a hole for myself, crying. Ling Mozu found that her mentality was not the only one. Almost everyone had a similar reaction to Xia Guixuan after hearing about his condition. They were all shocked and worried at first, but when they heard that he was healing himself and was not on danger of life, their attitudes changed to being interested in watching the amnesiac and innocent version of Xia Guixuan. It doesn't matter whether he has recovered to his peak, it's good to be alive, and it's even better to be innocent. That's about it. Looking at Yan Wuyu's attitude, he almost said, are you there? Let's see Jill. Then he was stopped by Shang Zhaoi, who was in charge of the work, and they all rushed to find medicinal materials. No matter what kind of medicine it was, they would find all that might be useful. Xiao Jiu also thought that if Tathagata knew about Xia Guixuan's condition, the other party might plan a surprise attack, so it was better to watch slowly and do a good job of defense. So it was Ling Moxu who accompanied Xia Guixuan. Ling Moxu wondered if Xia Guixuan was the most miserable harem master in history. With such a bad character, he was injured and lost his memory. Everyone felt sorry for him for only 3 seconds, and then almost everyone wanted to watch his good show or bully him. So it is said that if you mess around, you will always have to pay it back. Because this guy usually stands too high. It feels like the relationship between him and everyone is like the leader's unspoken rules for his subordinates. For a long time, Shang Zhao and Long Yao were entangled in the cognition of whether to sleep with him. Although objectively he is more and more emotional, everyone also thinks that they like him. But there is always no real feeling. Sometimes I can't tell whether I am worshipping or in love, especially Ling Moxu. Sometimes I can't even tell whether I am Stockholm. Of course, maybe it is not too important whether it is worshipping or in love. Anyway, they have chosen him and will be with him for a lifetime. What is the difference in the result? No one would think about this in daily life. It is meaningless. As a result, this guy really fell into the mortal world. Suddenly, I felt that he was getting closer, from the high and mighty Father God to a mortal who needed everyone's care. From the illusion of the misty clouds, I became more down to earth. Maybe when Xiao Siming wanted to hurt him and take him home, he had similar emotions. It was finally understandable. Ling Moxu was wondering if he had considered the effect and significance before he sealed his memory. Not sure. What is certain is that everyone is really in love. It's not because of his strength that they are attached to him. Even if he falls into the mortal world, no one knows whether he can recover his memory. Maybe he will never recover from this? But everyone can stick with him. Not only do they not dislike him for becoming weak, but they also like him like this. Isn't this obvious? Some things that I asked about my heart before can be determined. Ling Moxu is too lazy to consider the situation of others. She only needs to be sure of herself. She doesn't want to see him bow his head, she will be sad. She doesn't want to take the opportunity to brainwash him to avoid distortion. He is who he is, and he must be the same. Even if he still wants me to kneel and call him master in the future. If this is not love, then what else is? General, Xia Guixuan's voice came from her ears, awakening Ling Moxa from her trance. She turned her head and looked at Xia Guixuan sitting on the top of the transport plane, curling her lips in anger. This guy heals very quickly, and he will be able to get out of bed freely soon. Ling Moxa missed the time when she walked in the star field with him, so she took him out of the cabin and went outside. Thinking back to the time when she couldn't walk in the universe at all, he changed a set of spacesuits for her to wear. I thought that Xia Guixuan, who was so weak that he had no strength to walk, would beg the general to help him travel in the universe so that he could regain a sense of accomplishment of "it's my turn to take you." As a result, he got out of the cabin and sat on the top naturally. The weightlessness, vacuum, and turbulence of the universe had no effect on him at all. He also learned to transmit sound without a teacher, as if it was rooted in muscle memory like eating and talking. How did you do it when you obviously don't have any magic power? I can't even take you around the universe. It's so annoying. Ling Moxa was not in a good mood, so she asked, "What's wrong? Aren't you sitting very smoothly?" Xia Guixuan said carefully, "Well, the sound transmission method you taught me just now, I thought about it, it seems that it can be improved." "Your method, is too sharp." Ling Moxa's eyebrows were raised. You can." With a bang, Ling Moxa couldn't bear it anymore and kicked, "Die in the vast universe and experience what sharpness is, it feels so good to beat him." "Sister Xiao Siming, I understand." Ahem, Xia Guixuan was kicked off the cabin roof, struggling to grab the bulge of the ship, and climbed up awkwardly. "I don't mean anything else, I just think the general looks good when he smiles." "Don't be so cold." Ling Moxa was stunned, and his expression became a little weird. "Hey, you want to pick me up? You have lost your memory, your fighting skills are no longer good, but the Sea King's skills are retained, right?" She crossed her arms with a half-smile, looking up and down at Xia Guixuan. His eyes were still clear, and there was no sign of any ulterior motives. "Damn, this mode is very lethal to women." Ling Moxa said with a stern face, "It's none of your business what mode my voice transmission is. You can change the mode you like as long as you are good enough," Xia Guixuan said. "Will the general not be angry if you change the skills taught by the general?" Ling Moxa smiled. There was a person who preached to the world, but he was happy because the ethnic group had the ambition to transcend its own barriers. "I think he is amazing." Xia Guixuan was a little jealous. "I think this person is probably pretentious. If he is really surpassed, he might be stern." Ling Moxa laughed and bent over with laughter. Yes, your judgment is correct." Xia Guixuan seemed to realize that he was stabbing himself in the back, and he kept silent with a stinky face. "Ha!" Ling Moxa laughed even more happily. "Still so arrogant. He is so fun to be like this." Xia Guixuan secretly glanced at her. She looks so beautiful like this. But her peeking eyes were caught by Ling Moxa. Her smile quickly disappeared and she frowned again. "How do you feel about your injuries now?" Xia Guixuan hesitated. "I feel that I have a lot of magic power growing, but I can't remember how to use them for the time being. As for my body, it is recovering on its own, which is a bit slow, and some parts still hurt. But if I can know how to use magic to repair it, the effect will be better. I wonder if the general knows how to heal." Ling Moxa was a little embarrassed. This question is beyond the scope. She can't do it. Wu Wu wants to take care of him like he took care of me back then, but it seems a bit difficult. He can do everything, and I only know swordsmanship. However, everyone had held a short meeting on Xia Guixuan's healing before, and they had already made a judgment. Asking others to teach him healing skills always feels like showing off a sword in front of Guangguang. No one has that kind of confidence and it's embarrassing. It's better to try to let him remember it himself. His own skills are the best. In other words, awakening the memory is the top priority. If it cannot be awakened in a short time, then it depends on whether it can be awakened separately for healing. There is a clear method for this. Ling Moxa looked up, and the Kanglong star in the distance had appeared in her field of vision. She was too lazy to wait for the transport plane to arrive, so she picked up Xia Guixuan and flashed away. Xia Guixuan thought she was going to take him to visit this planet. That was obviously his hometown in an attempt to awaken his memory. But before he could see clearly, Ling Moxa pressed his head, and the two of them rumbled all the way down, straight to the depths of the Earth's core. Xia Guixuan, but he heard Ling Moxa's voice echoing in his sea of consciousness. This is the place where you used to retreat and heal yourself. You healed your injuries for 25,000 years. The breath and blood you expelled are still deep underground. Some of them, well, they have hurt people. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.